What up, everyone? Happy Friday. We did it. We made it through another week. And now we're going to do what we do pretty much every day on my show. We talk about whatever I want to talk about. We're going to be talking about Antifa again today. But today we have beer that I'm going to drink out of a wine glass. And I think you guys are going to be really excited about one of the beer selections that I got. People who are following me on Twitter already know what it is. Don't spill the beans, bot. Okay. There is beer today because it is Friday, and you know what? Like, my haters on the internet, they do this all the time to me. They're like, Carlin drinks beer on her stream. Carlin is an alcoholic. And I'm like, listen. I am 43 years old. Okay, really 29. Obviously, I'm always 29. But in reality, I am 43 years old. I have loved craft beer since I was like 20. And you know what? I study socialist for a living, and so if I want to have a beer on a Friday, I will damn well have a beer on a Friday. And they can whine on me and be like, yeah, she's an alcoholic because she drinks beer on her stream. They sound like leftists, don't they? It's just like, oh my god. Anyway, guys, we are going to be returning to the land of Antifa today. We are continuing where we left off yesterday with CrimeThink. CrimeThink is an organization that publishes literature. They're actually Antifa. They are Antifa in real life. I have confirmed this with Andy No. In fact, when I asked Andy No, Andy, who are the people that are publishing zines and books and stuff for Antifa? He said, CrimeThink. And I said, all right. And so we are making our way through some documents that have been published by Antifa, and we're going to be listening to audio versions of those documents. I've got a couple of them pulled up. By the way, if you missed yesterday's stream, it was actually pretty great. We were listening to the same organization, and they kind of laid all the quiet part out loud. It was actually really awesome. Sorry about the distraction in the group chat earlier. Wasn't sure what chat to put the article in. Hey, thank you, Naruto. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I'm locking down our group chat so that it is only relevant to what we're talking about. Yes, and so here's the deal. Antifa are communists. Antifa are anarcho-communists. They are as far left as you can get. However, not all revolutionary socialists and communists are Antifa, but all Antifa are revolutionary socialists and communists. So it's like Andy No has a really specific niche when he's studying Antifa, because he is studying a very violent, militant subset of the radical revolutionary far left. They are all communists. They all want revolution. They want violent revolution. These are the people that you see in Black Bloc and like doing the stuff in the streets and stuff like that. However, they are not the only radical revolutionary socialists that exist. There's a whole other set of them that are just as radical in their ideology, but they may not be the ones out there that are actually in Black Bloc and stuff like that. They're not the ones doing the hand-to-hand combat training, and they are just as dangerous, and their ideas are just as dangerous, and I do both. Okay, I focus mostly on the other one though, because Andy No's got Antifa covered, but I think digging into what Antifa actually believes is important. They're the ones that aren't the pussies. Yeah, okay, offensive saint. All right. That's a good way to put it. So we do have a couple documents from Antifa. We're going to be listening to this first one. It's called Breaking Consensus with Reality: From Politics of Consent to the Seduction of Revolution. And I've got this one. This is a step-by-step guide to direct action. And I thought we could just make our way through those documents, and we're going to listen to what they have to say. These are audio only, so we're basically listening to audiobooks and we're analyzing them. But yesterday's was really interesting. I think today's is going to be really interesting as well. But we've got a couple orders of business before we get into that. Can I have my points of personal privilege, please? We have a James update. Couple James updates. So James's Twitter has actually been relatively boring, honestly. Wait, Milo says, noticed a pattern. It was the classical liberal caucus who was gatekeeping and tried to burn down the LP when the Mises caucus won and didn't get their way. It's the same sort of, James Lindsay does seem to be doing the same thing that the classical liberal caucus did in the Libertarian Party, doesn't he? He does seem to be doing the same thing. Isn't that interesting? Because the Mises caucus loves James. So I wonder how they're feeling about all this. Is Antifa... Yes. Yeah. I'm honestly kind of shocked you even have that question, if I'm honest. Like, you've been here long enough to know this. Yes. That's all right, though. So James's Twitter has been relatively boring today, if I'm honest about it. He's kind of just doing the same old thing. But I did find this tweet interesting. Leftists aren't liberals. Rightists aren't conservatives. What do you guys think this means? I'm going to tell you what I think it means. James is saying Democrats are no longer liberal. They're communists. And right-leaning people aren't conservatives. They're classical liberals. That's what I think he means. Does anyone else think that that's what James is... Actually, no. Actually, you know what? You're right. You're right, bot. You're right. You're right. I'm wrong. You're right. James is saying, you're right. I got that wrong. Leftists are not Democrats. They're communists. Rightists aren't conservatives. They're woke right. You're 100% right about that. No, you're 100% right, bot. You're 100% right. James is full of shit. Yep. Yep. But, you know, I was thinking about this, and James posted this about me last night, and I talked about it on the stream that I did last night, but I want to talk about this again. As you guys know, and I'm sorry if you were on the stream last night, not everyone was, so it might be a little bit, like, you know, I'm going to reiterate some of the things I said on the stream last night, but I actually do want to publicly address this. The communists are taking out advertisements on subway cars. Yeah, I saw that, Nuru2. Thank you. I do actually want to address this from James. Because, of course, James was calling me an abusive... What did he call me? An abusive psychopath on Twitter yesterday. This is all about me. And James says, it's a huge shame because she wasn't an abusive psycho. She'd be pretty useful to the cause, maybe like 10% of one Chris Rufo. I want to be really, really clear about this. I am not part of James Lindsay's cause. I am not part of Chris Rufo's cause. I've never been part of James Lindsay's cause, at least not since 2021. I've never been part of Chris Rufo's cause. In fact, like Chris Rufo, you said, like, Carlin, do you need anything? I'm like, no, I'm good. I could have asked him for stuff. I never did. And I don't necessarily have any, well, actually, no. I know Chris Rufo has shit-talked me behind the scenes. I've heard about it from enough people. I absolutely know Chris Rufo has shit-talked me behind the scenes. I have less animosity towards him, though, than I do towards James Lindsay. I don't agree with what Chris Rufo is doing now for, like, several reasons. A, I'm not a conservative. B, I don't think that DEI matters. C, I don't think that plagiarism matters. I think that he's just drumming up stuff to enhance his own brand. I find what Chris Rufo's doing to be incredibly inauthentic and incredibly manufactured. And to me, it's obvious that he's going to run for Congress or something at some point. And it just really kind of like, I get the icks out of it. You know what I'm saying? It's like when you know you're looking at something that's completely inauthentic and contrived, you're like, I'm not on that team, man. But I also don't begrudge Chris Rufo doing what he's doing. And I've said it a million times. I do think that he's more a net positive than a net negative. What he has done in terms of the activism he's done it's been incredible, honestly. And I'm not going to take that away from him just because I don't agree with what he's doing now and just because he shit-talked me behind the scenes. I will still say that Chris Rufo stepped up and did something that no one else wanted to step up and do. But what I will also say is I was not one of the people, I was adamant that I didn't want to step up and do what Chris Rufo did. I've said this for years. I've said for years, and people can go back and watch streams from literally like 4 years ago. I said for years, I was so grateful that Chris Rufo stepped up in the way that he did, because if he hadn't, I don't think anyone else would have. And if there had been that void, I would have felt some obligation to try. And that was not what I wanted to do. So James's notion, like, Carlin could have been, maybe 10% of Chris Rufo. I don't want to do what Chris Rufo's doing. I have no desire to do what Chris Rufo's doing. I don't want to do what James is doing. I have no desire to be a puppet for Moms for Liberty and Turning Point USA. I don't have any desire to go debate at the Oxford Union or give speeches in front of the European Union or whatever the fuck he did. I mean, cool for him, man. I'm sure it was a good experience. I legitimately don't want to do that. I really just don't. I like it. Like I don't want to. I don't want to be traveling all that much. I used to give keynote speeches all the time, and I'm not saying I won't give a speech here or there if I like the project, I like the people involved, stuff like that. But I am really happy right now. You know, I was thinking about this last night. I certainly do have my moments where I want to quit what I'm doing because what I'm doing is really hard, and it's like exhausting, and it's, you know, a lot of things. But on the other side of it, I actually genuinely love what I'm doing. I think what I'm doing is fucking cool. I'm digging into corners that no one else has ever dug into. I'm going undercover at events in disguise. I'm infiltrating into things I'm not supposed to be in. I'm causing trouble. I'm pissing people off on the internet. I make a living doing that. I mean, it is kind of incredible. I get to teach hundreds of thousands of people a month what the far left is doing based on primary source evidence. Like, that's cool, man. I love what I'm doing. And so for James to say, you know, Carlin maybe could have been a really big help to the cause if she had just done what we wanted her to do, but she's too much of a psycho to do what we wanted her to do, which everyone knows that's what he's saying, right? Everyone knows that's what he's saying. Carlin didn't do what we wanted her to do. Carlin didn't follow the approved talking points. Carlin didn't work with the approved organizations. Carlin refused to go on the approved blessed shows. Carlin didn't want to engage in our bullshit narrative building. And so she's a literal psycho and she could have been really useful to us. I'm sorry, James. I don't want to be part of your shilling of a conservative narrative. And I don't care if that means that I get millions of less views. I don't care if that means I make millions of less dollars than you, bro. You want to know why? Because I can look in the mirror and know that I held my head high and I did what I did with intellectual integrity and I did not deviate. I didn't sell out. There was a time when what James did was actually good. James has now sold out to the highest bidder on multiple different fronts. And, you know, he can work out all his feelings he wants about that. And what James is really doing, I hope everyone understands this, right? James knows that he's lying to people. James knows that he's lying to people. And I'm sure because James knows he's lying to people, there's a lot of guilt that comes along with that. He literally has to spend his day shilling talking points that he is paid to shill. He is lying and he knows it and he feels guilty about that. So what is he doing? He's targeting me, who, by the way, I'm the only kind of like anti-woke, anti-communist person that I know of. Maybe there are others. I'll leave that door open, but I'm the only one that I know of that never went along with this bullshit. I'm the only one that maintained intellectual integrity. I'm the only one that remained authentic to who I was and what I believed, even if my ideas evolved over time, because I'm a human being and human beings grow and change over time if they're being real about things. So what is James doing? He's an inauthentic, manufactured, political shill. He knows it. He feels guilty about it. So he is targeting me with all his guilt and he's projecting his baggage onto me. That's Psychology 101, James. You talk about the ironclad law of woke projection. I'm going to call this the ironclad law of grifter projection. So James can be like, oh, well, she could have been on our team. No. 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 I'm not on your team. I'm not on Chris Rufo's team. I'm on my own fucking team. I am on my own team. I am the leader of my own team. And by the way, I'm going to say this too. If anyone thinks I'm just too mean for words, those people have never had a tough coach growing up. Those people have never had someone that has pushed them to be great at anything. You want to know who the best coaches are, James? They're the ones that make you step up. They're the ones that see potential in you that you can't even see in yourself, and they will go at you until you make the choice to embrace the potential that you have. And guess what, bro? Once you do it, you thank them for it because they were the best teacher that you ever had. James has never had a tough coach growing up. Anyone that runs away from me and says, she's such a narcissistic bully, oh my God, she's an abusive psychopath. They have never had a tough coach growing up. They have never had a tough teacher growing up. They have never had a mentor that has pushed them beyond what they're comfortable with. I mean, they're kind of like the leftist snowflakes that they complain about, aren't they? They just want everything done for them. They want everything to be easy. They want everyone to be nice to them. They want everyone to kiss their ass at every occasion. I'm not going to do that. I came from the coaching world. And I was an awesome fucking executive coach. And I was an awesome performance coach. And maybe someday I'll go back and do that again. Because I am really effing good at it. I could get people to find potential in themselves that they didn't know they had. And now I'm focusing it on this. And people might think I'm mean. You know what? Go cry into your pillow and then go pay Turning Point or Moms for Liberty or Daily Wire or The Blaze all your money. And they will tell you all the things that you want to hear and they will reinforce all of the talking points that you're desperate for. But if you actually want to learn, you come to the person who's actually teaching. And if we look at James's Twitter, here's what I can absolutely say. James is no longer teaching about the left. He stopped teaching about the left a long-ass time ago. And now his entire public persona is just whining and complaining about a variety and mishmash of things that he doesn't like. But he's not teaching. He's not sharing information. He's not hinged into reality. He's not making sure his audience understands. You think I'm less than 10% effective as Chris Rufo? Does Chris Rufo's audience know what the radical revolutionary far left is doing? One in the chat if you think that Chris Rufo's audience knows what the radical revolutionary far left is doing. Two in the chat if you think they don't. Does James Lindsay's audience know what the radical revolutionary far left is doing in America right now? I don't think they do. But let's see. For Chris Rufo's audience, does Chris Rufo's audience, even though he's been highly effective at some things, does Chris Rufo's audience know what the radical revolutionary far left is doing? One in the chat if they do, two in the chat if they don't. That's an awful lot of twos. And a lot of my audience follows Chris Rufo. It's not as though they're ignorant of what he's doing. 3. I don't know what that means, MP. Put an X in the chat if you think that James Lindsay's audience has no idea what the far left is doing. X in the chat if you think that James Lindsay's audience has no idea what the far left is doing. Let's see. Put a Y in the chat if you think they do. We'll give you the other option as well. Put a Y in the chat if you think that James Lindsay's audience is educated on the far left. Put a Y in the chat if they are not educated on the far left. It's a lot of X's. It's a lot of X's. So it seems to me, James can say, oh, Carlin could be so much more effective. It seems to me that I'm actually much more effective at what I do than James Lindsay's audience and Chris Rufo's, than James Lindsay and Chris Rufo put together. Because my audience knows what the radical revolutionary far left is doing. My audience can define their terms. My audience knows who the real activists are. My audience knows how they organize. My audience knows how to identify them clearly when they show up in the wild. James Lindsay's audience can't do that. Chris Rufo's audience can't do that. James Lindsay's audience can't even define what the far left means by capitalism, even though James claims he's taught them a million times because he hasn't. Chris Rufo's audience can't either because Chris Rufo has never taught them that. So, James can wax philosophical all he wants. And it doesn't matter that he has millions of more followers than I do. It doesn't fucking matter. Because more people in my audience know what the radical revolutionary far left is doing than in James's entire platform. And that's not by percentage, that's just by pure numbers. So that's my standard for effectiveness, James. Have I effectively taught what the the radical revolutionary far left is doing in plain English in a way that not only can my audience understand it, but my audience can go into their communities with their family, with their friends, and teach it out to them in exactly the same way that I taught it. That's my standard. You haven't done that. Rufo hasn't done that. The only person that's done that is me. So be jealous, bro. Cope harder. I don't really care. I've even taught people how to go undercover at events. I have had multiple people from my community go undercover at events. Has anyone from James's community ever gone undercover at events to do recon? Nope, hasn't happened. Another interesting thing is Z Van Fleet. I constantly think about the Do Nothing Bitches clip. It explains so much in like 2 minutes. That is a great clip, Naruto. I appreciate that. Thank you again for the super chat. You know, I actually feel like a little bit bad for Z Van Fleet because Z Van Fleet is just a tool for James Lindsay, but I just want to demonstrate this. I called out Z Van Fleet last year and I said, you are not serious about this and you are a tool of whatever political narrative. And it was like, no, Carlin, Z Van Fleet survived the Cultural Revolution and you need to be nice to her. And I was like, respect for surviving the Cultural Revolution. Okay, I get it. Yeah, and I do actually respect that. But that doesn't mean that Z Van Fleet isn't engaging as a tool of the political narrative to build her brand and sell her books and make her money and become relevant and all of these things. Z Van Fleet today retweeted Lisa Logan's UN Oprah conspiracy theory and said, these are the real communists. The real communists are the UN. The real communists is Oprah. The real communists are the New Age Gnostics, and they're taking over the world! No, that's not what's happening. But I thought for fun we would educate ourselves because listen, James's audience never actually educates themselves about what I'm talking about. And so I thought, do you guys want to listen before we get into the Antifa stuff? Do you guys want to listen to what Z Van Fleet is co-signing in Lisa Logan's latest conspiracy theory? Nathan says, I find it amusing when James talks about people being crazy cycles who are not useful to the cause, and then he is the one making theories about a woke right cabal that is in league with Zoroastrian demons. You know, I think that's, yeah. I think that's a really fair point there, Nathan. So I thought we would do our own due diligence, guys, and take a couple minutes before we get into Antifa. And we're going to listen to Lisa Logan's latest conspiracy theory, and it's going to be great. Now, before we do that, actually, can I get a beer before we do this? I feel like I need a beer before we do this. Can I get a beer first? Hang on. Per our happy hour tradition, I'm going to get 4 beers that I got at the craft beer store, and you guys get to vote. Hang on. Let me grab them from the floor. I'm back. Why am I... Okay, it's kind of working. I'm in a perpetual state of needing to restart my computer. Okay. Here's our first beer for today. You guys get to vote. This is only on YouTube that you guys get to vote. We've got Virgil. Virgil is a brewery that I drink every so often. They've got a new pumpkin ale out. They've got kind of cool glass. They've got kind of cool cans. People know I have a beer can collection of all the cool craft beer cans. And this is just a pumpkin ale, and I haven't had it yet, and I always like to try all pumpkin ales. So our first one is our Virgil pumpkin ale. That is option number 1. I was in kind of like a beer mood today. I don't have that many fruity beers. I just was like in the mood for like some good kind of like fall Oktoberfest sort of beers. This next one, I just like the can. Look at this. How pretty. And it's got a really nice texture to it as well. It feels so nice. I love a can with a good texture. I do. But look at this. It's like fall. And where is this brewery from? Can't even read it. This is from New Hampshire! Yay, New Hampshire beer. This is called Autumn Buzz Copper Ale. This is from Northwoods Brewery in New Hampshire. And that's it. It's a copper ale. Our next one is going to be like more of an Oktoberfest. And I got it. It's a red ale, but it says it's a Marzen. A Marzen is like your typical Oktoberfest. It's a Nashua red. Nashua is the town that I live next to in New Hampshire. And so I'm sure this is actually brewed there. Brewed in Nashua, New Hampshire. Amber lager with clean, rich, toasty, malty flavors and low bitterness. That is our next option. That is our Marzen. But I know which beer you guys are going to go for. I know which one you're going to go for. I almost didn't even do a poll because I know which beer you guys are going to vote for. The beer has been queered. The beer is queer. This beer is called Polyamorous Cabal. The beer is queer. It is a farmhouse ale, and that's all the information I have on it. Do you know where it was brewed? Massachusetts. Massachusetts, the home of Somerville. Somerville is the first city in America to enact legal protections for polyamorous couples. The beer has been queered. So I'm putting the poll in the chat. If you don't want to vote for the queer beer, I won't be upset about it. Let me know which one you want me to drink first. In the meantime, I will say hi to people on Rumble. I'll say hi to people on Kick. Please make sure you have mounted that like button, guys. Please make sure you have subscribed to the channel if you are not already. And yeah, I'm going to be drinking that polyamory beer, aren't I? I'm absolutely... Reagan's like, I voted for pumpkin. Hey, can we all give a shout out to Reagan? I should have pulled this up. Fucking Frank. Actually, I should pull this up. Frank McCormick has lost his fucking mind. And Frank McCormick was attacking Reagan last night. Do you guys know Reagan, like, universally is always the person that gets attacked. Reagan and Bot always get attacked on my behalf. Hang on, I gotta show you this. Do you guys remember when James Lindsay attacked Reagan? Okay. Never mind. Do you guys remember when James Lindsay attacked Reagan? And basically what happened was Reagan was trying to teach people in James's audience about queer theory. And then James took a screenshot of it and he retweeted Reagan. And he was like, block this person immediately. And it was the best. So check this out. Oh, actually, hang on. I got other stuff I want to show you with our friend Frank. So check this out. Reagan, by the way, Reagan is like the nicest person in my chat. There is like no one nicer than Reagan by far. Let me crack open this polyamorous beer, and we'll have one more gossipy moment before we listen to Lisa Logan's UN conspiracy theory as a warm up for Antifa. Oh, look at that head. Cheer. The polyamorous beer has a lot of head, of course. So last night, Reagan, of course, was engaging in the comrade war against James Lindsay. And I think this was a reply to Colin Wright. And she said they're scared of her because for whatever reason, they think she's woke right. When in reality, all she's doing is correctly exposing far-left revolutionary socialist activists. This is why she can't put this is why we can't put the classical liberals in charge. They'll lie and smear and make zero progress. Frank responds to Reagan. The only thing more psychotic than Dr. Cluster B is you. A psychotic woman who idolizes and simps for her. You're definitely her Harley Quinn. God, I hope you don't give her money. Please tell me you're not that dumb. they can't get to me, so they try to get to Reagan. So everyone give a round of applause to Reagan for correctly triggering Frank McCormick, expertly triggering Frank McCormick. Reagan is indeed my Harley Quinn. It's true. This is the role that Reagan took on when she became the chief organizational officer of my cult. She has an official position, an official title, all that stuff. I wish people wouldn't attack her on the internet, but you know why they attack her? Because she does such an amazing job at what she does, and she's like one of the nicest people in the community, and they can't get her on anything else, so they're like, you're crazy for supporting Carlin. Here's a couple other crazy things Frank said. Check this out. Brown Barbaloot was replying to Frank, and Brown Barbaloot says, have you watched any of Carlin's content regardless of her looks? Because here's what Frank did. Frank likes to make fun of my looks because, you know, he's a real man who definitely doesn't have a tiny, tiny, tiny penis. And Frank was making fun of my looks with a 4-year-old picture, and I actually don't think I'm out of that picture. Like, whatever. I definitely have a different look today than I did back then. And so Brown Barbaloot was like, Frank, have you ever, like, you know, maybe watched her content, you know, instead of just doing commentary on her looks? Frank says, I can assure you I know far more about what the left is doing in public schools from over a decade of experience than Carlin Borisenko does watching YouTube videos about public schools while eating Cheetos in her pajamas. I don't think I've ever eaten Cheetos on a stream before. I don't even eat Cheetos in general, but I also don't think I watch videos about the public schools. I mean, maybe once in a while we do. But check this out. This was my favorite Frank moment of all time. Because Frank got so pissed off that I wrote this article on my Substack that he took a picture of it. He said, by help, Dr. Cluster B means your money because she is unemployable. You know, the funny thing about that is Frank is referencing this article in which I don't even ask for money in this article. I just give people instructions about things they can do on Twitter to help me game the algorithm and tell people to join my Telegram. I literally don't even ask for money in this article, except for the boilerplate stuff. Like, this is on every article I write, but there's no ask for money in this article. So Frank McCormick, who is a teacher teaching young minds, also a big-time James Lindsay, like, simp. James loves Frank. James thinks Frank is the best. Frank didn't bother to do a basic fact check to actually look at the article before he said that I was asking for money when I wasn't asking for money. Frank seems to think the only thing that I do on my live streams is eat Cheetos and watch videos about the public school, which is just, like, provably not true. And Frank thinks that the only people crazier than me are the people who support me. Isn't that fun? Isn't that fun? These are the psychos that I'm dealing with on the internet. And this is why I drink on Fridays. This is why. Right here. Cheers. Definitely tastes like hipster. Definitely tastes like hipster to me. They've turned the beer gay. No. Not gay. Not gay, Nathaniel. Or Nathan, sorry, not Nathaniel. There was another Nathaniel, so sorry, different person. Nope, they've turned the beer queer. The beer is queer. Simona! Take my money. You opened my eyes, like, unlike the conservatives who misled me and kept them closed. I appreciate you. Keep going. Thank you, Simona. I do appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for the super chat. Let's get the super chat progress banner up. So, guys, what we're going to be doing is we're going to take a little Lisa Logan detour. We are going to get to Antifa. But I need to do something else first because we need to make sure we are educating ourselves about the insanity that Lisa Logan and James Lindsay are teaching people. Because remember, all of this is endorsed by James. This was retweeted by James when she put it up. And so I want to know what they're teaching people. And so we're going to look at this Twitter thread and then we're going to do Antifa. Is everyone cool with that? If you're not cool with that, come back in like 10, 15 minutes, okay? Go do something else. Go buy some beer. Go take a bathroom break. Go make dinner. Come back in like 10, 15 minutes and we will We'll be moving on to Antifa, but this is my stream. I'll do what I want. So this is the Z Van Fleet and James Lindsay endorsed Lisa Logan Twitter thread. She is retweeting her original... Oh, wait, no. Is this part of this? Let's look at this. Let's look at this first. Okay, so last April, Lisa Logan released this Twitter thread. This is about the Oprah, Gnostic, sex cult, New Age, WEF, globalist conspiracy theory, okay? So Lisa has now released an updated Twitter thread, and we're going to see what she has to say. Attention! The independent party has been infiltrated by the evolutionary cult leader's cult. They want to transform America into something called a synergistic democracy. In short, they want to change how we vote to ranked choice and final five, blockchain, etc. All right, let's listen.
Win-lose voting is not as natural as joining together to co-create. We had to go through win-lose democracy so that each individual could feel, I am significant. We've come to the end of your ability to be significant as an individual, winning or losing alone. Within this domain of the evolutionary church, we are announcing the development of the next stage of democracy, a politics of love. We are going to be calling on the genius of the noosphere and all these young tech guys that are doing it. And finally, we're going to be calling on the Office for the Future, which holds the wheel of co-creation within it, and which carries us through right to the United Nations of this world. In my opinion, One Nation is stepping into the evolutionary choice point between devolution and more conscious evolution with exactly the framework and the attitude toward which we could build a synergistic democracy.
I don't know. I don't know who this is. I don't know who this is.
So I'm the founder of the party One Nation, and that's what she was speaking into in that endorsement. That's what the synergistic democracy is that Barbara's been prophesying of for decades, is that government becomes a vehicle for the thriving of all. In its full evolution from the caterpillar to the butterfly.
The nature of voting itself has become preposterous. We use mechanisms of technology to create synergy, and synergy means a whole greater than the sum of the parts.
Okay, maybe if we keep going in this thread, it'll all start to make sense. Applying both Marxist-derived... This is where us knowing how to speak socialist is going to be helpful. Applying both Marxist-derived and Hegelian principles to democracy, this move towards synergistic democracy is about inhabiting others' value. So guys, as we make our way through this thread, I want you to ask yourself, do these people sound like the real Marxists that we listen to all day, every day?
The structure of democracy itself is win-lose. And the structure of democracy itself is, right, there's a problem, okay, there's a challenge, okay, the problem needs to be solved. One group of people, right, has enough power to formulate, let's say a referendum, to formulate a law. That law favors one set of values. That law favors one set of people. That group of people then uses all of their power available in order to pass their law. So let's say that group of people, let's just take the United States as an example. The United States is split pretty much 50-50 between two large blocks. So if one block wins, that means the entire other block has been defeated. And voting becomes a win-lose form of aggression. Right? We create radical polarization, which destroys the basic movement of evolution, which is synergy. Right? Synergy means there's value on both sides. Does everyone get that? There's value on both sides. We actually inhabit each other's value. We need to actually inhabit the value on each side of polarities and come to the higher integration. We called that here a number of months ago. We called that, anyone remember? She comes in threes. And she comes in threes means there's always a polarity, a thesis and an antithesis. Hegel talked about a thesis and an antithesis, right? A polarity. And then that thesis and antithesis, if you have good information, if you inhabit each other's values, if you inhabit each other's perspectives, you synergize, right, at a higher level of consciousness. So we need structures of voting in which we vote, but in new ways, right, which actually we're informed. And maybe we have representatives who vote for us on issues that we don't understand, right? Maybe we require actually responsibilities in order to exercise the rights, and we need to be informed on issues. Maybe we have to have conferences right all over the country, new town halls online and in person, where we actually dialogue directly and listen deeply and inhabit each other's perspective and values, right, and then create together proposals for synergy.
All right, let me just get your reactions in the chat. These people sound like liberals. The socialists want to change the system, or want to destroy the system, not change it. They don't sound like communists. There's no Marxist language. They're not talking like Marxists. They're not talking about capitalism. This sounds like a cult. This is academic liberal BS. They're not going to use any Marxist language because they don't know any, because they don't understand anything about them. No, this isn't even New Age. I am very woo-woo. I am tuned into the art of woo. This isn't even New Age. This is like crazy talk. These are crazy people. I've been in the environment of woo for like the majority of my adult life. I've never encountered stuff like this before. I've never heard the communists talk about the word synergy. Newsflash, democracy is evil. Anyone who knows political science knows this. We agree with that. They sound like progressives or Malthusians. Yep. Okay, let's keep going, because, you know, on our channel we do due diligence and we actually listen to people. The evolution of democracy is the evolution of love, is the evolution of God. This video proves that the synergistic democracy currently being pushed by Christopher Life and his burgeoning influence in the independent party is extremely religious in nature, led by the one church.
Structure of win, lose, and here we reside now in the midst of the first evolutionary church on earth. Recognizing
Did she post her clip
that
again?
the structure of win-lose democracy through voting, great as it was for its time, cannot coordinate us toward a planetary sense of connectivity, wholeness, oneness, and liberate the creativity of ourselves when we join.
Wait. She says that Lisa Logan, I missed it. We need to start again, because Lisa Logan apparently thinks that this person is quoting Karl Marx.
And here we reside now in the midst of the first evolutionary church on earth. Recognizing that the structure of win-lose democracy through voting, great as it was for its time, cannot coordinate us toward a planetary sense of connectivity, wholeness, oneness, and liberate the creativity of ourselves when we join.
Marx.
We've hit a structural impasse because the win-lose structure in all existing liberal democracies is not working. I'm just taking this, Mark, for right now as an announcement that the evolutionary church is a seedbed for evolutionary democracy. The seedbed is a church that is growing in the consciousness of the people founding this church. We are the first church to announce the origin and fulfillment and dedication to synergistic democracy.
Amen. And
what is synergistic democracy? being announced by the first evolutionary church, whose text is the sacred story of evolution. Amen. Allurement, quark to quark to quark, all the way on up to single cells, to multicells, to animals, to humans, to humanity, to us in this sacred church. So let everybody feel for the moment the awesome generation of capacity that we have.
Right, democracy as it functions today is not working. We need an evolution of democracy. We need to include and transcend into the next stage. The evolution of democracy is the evolution of love, which is the evolution of God, right? If democracy is a thought form in the mind of God, right? And the mind of God is the infinite creativity and value that animates reality, then the evolution of that mind form is the evolution of democracy.
They think these people are socialists, guys. Do you think these people are socialists? I don't think these people are socialists. Christopher Life is an evolutionary leader and a member of the Evolutionary One Church. Gaffney remarked on a Facebook post that Christopher was a wonderful partner with his team in envisioning the next steps that we have enacted together. The step is synergistic democracy.
Now, Barbara was a I love that this church allows people to come together and worship. And I've really enjoyed being part of this community for years now. Barbara was a dear friend of mine, and we met and came into relationship late in her life. And her passing was a real shock to so many of us, and myself included, because it was feeling like we were just activating a real
so that Barbara woman's dead.
Roadmap together. So I just
problem solved.
Imagined we were going to be at it for decades together. And One Nation was a new political party that I've organized, and the purpose of organizing that party was to create a political vehicle to help folks that are in this conversation, that know that we are in a meta crisis, but to use Barbara's terminology, our crisis is a birth, right? There's a crisis here. There's an ambulance running down the road with the sirens on, but it's not a heart attack. It's a birth. There's something coming in this urgent moment of crisis. One Nation Party was designed to help people who really are oriented around systemic transformation and moving towards holism and synergy and integrating diverse perspectives to create new and novel insights and new and novel solutions, to be able to become the mayors and the state representatives and the governors and the national congressional representatives and the presidents of the future. And so I was really excited and grateful to be working with Barbara on that project, and to receive such an explicit endorsement was very humbling for me. And right when we were gearing up to really put a lot of things in motion, we lost her in this world. And the only way that I could really make sense of all of that was that she was moving on beyond into the spirit realm to kind of bring that.
This is like Scientology.
That allyship and that partnership, in a broader, even more profound way than she'd be able to do in the flesh.
This is like Scientology. This is so weird. Rottweiler, thank you for the super chat. Lisa Logan definitely acts like a Jehovah's Witness, denouncing everything as cultish or satanic. Barbara Marx Hubbard is a futurist author who kind of takes her thing way too seriously. Not a commie. No, she's not a commie. She's a crazy person. Crazy people are not necessarily communists. Let's see. We're going to go through the whole thread, though. We're going to do our due diligence, understanding the influence of sea life, and considering the GOP's recent partnership with independents to get Trump over the finish line. We should be extremely vigilant in not allowing independent party principles that do not align with constitutional values into the GOP platform. So Lisa Logan is now saying that what we're looking at is representative of all people who are not conservatives. That's what Lisa Logan's saying. Guys, We're aligning with independents to get Donald Trump elected, but we can't let these people into our party. This is what she thinks independent means.
That we're then in competition with each other. one nation to our country and kind of put a couple years into the developing of this party platform, had a very particular insight that helped me to evolve the brand and evolve the theory of change.
Hey, thanks,
And
Mountain
that
Goddess.
was
I
that
appreciate you.
as an emerging
Thank
new
you.
party, that was clear that we were moving beyond the two-party control of this country. I was inadvertently in competition with dozens of other emerging small parties who had a very similar ethos to be able to move beyond the dominant hegemonic control of the two-party system in this country. And even running candidates that were then in competition with each other, competing against independent dollars and independent votes, which only reinforces the election outcomes of the existing two parties. And once I really got that, I realized that I was no longer aligned with that. That theory of change had brought me to a particular intersection, kind of junction point of the Dharma. And then that produced a set of insights that allowed the next iteration to kind of unfold. And what I realized was that the world doesn't need another new party. What the world needs is a coordination system for all independent parties, a coordination system for the hundreds of organizations that are working on democracy reform initiatives. And so I founded an organization called the Independent National Union. And that's the union as a political concept, not like a labor union, but actually a union of political actors. We need something like a board of tourism for the independent sector itself to be able to kind of concentrate resources to quote unquote put up that billboard, if you will, and to be able to build a stronger narrative of what this moment in time really holds for us, what it means to be independent. And so now we have a moment in time to declare independence even from this last 250-year cycle of a national experiment, so that we can inventory all the lessons learned, and from that, integrate that into directing the future from here.
Listen, I'm not doing commentary on this because I really want everyone to just take this in. I want everyone to judge for themselves. Some of the things the party is advocating for: decentralization, putting everything on a blockchain. By the way, CPAC also actually advocates for blockchain, including voting, attaching access to everything with a digital ID. This is just one of the planks needed for a social credit system and for manipulating voting through DAOs. I'm going to have to do a whole separate thread on who was platformed at the Independent Party National Convention that Christopher Life organized. Speakers included Mark Gaffney and evolutionary leaders Chief Phil Lang, Marianne Williamson, and Jeff. I don't know who Jeff is at all. Just a reminder, this is not a... Here it is! Look! Oprah! I told you this was about Oprah. This is not just a fringe cult. These leaders have been on Oprah, ran for president and vice president, and have just recently been advising the United Nations on their outcome document at the Summit for the Future. This is folded into what I call the democracy agenda. These entities are all working together to claim there is a threat to democracy in order to control and change it. Our constitutional republic is a threat to their agenda, so it must be destroyed. And that was all the Twitter thread. We went through everything. I let everyone look for themselves at what was in it. Hang on, we need to get back to the start of this debacle. Hang on, bear with me. And then here's where this all started. This is what Z Van Fleet and James... So remember, we're watching this because Z Van Fleet and James Lindsay have both retweeted and endorsed Lisa Logan's conspiracy. The newest term for communism and socialism is synergistic democracy. These types of government models constantly shroud themselves in nice-sounding language to obfuscate the fact that they would require a redistribution of resources for the good of the whole. Beware of anyone pushing this. Endorsed by Z Van Fleet and James Lindsay. But remember, guys, remember. According to James, I'm the problem. According to James, I'm the abusive psycho that isn't at all effective in this. But do you know what he will endorse? Lisa Logan's crazy Oprah conspiracy theory, because that's not confusing to people at all. Yup, mass genocide. I am Carlin Burrisol. It's true. Mass genocide is, in fact, me. It's true. It's true. Hey, Alex, thank you for the late fee. So you know what, guys? Never say we don't do our own due diligence. If someone else has a different idea, we'll listen to your idea, even if we think you're a psycho. But at least I'm not the one screaming about the Oprah Gnostic sex cult WEF United Nations conspiracy theory. I'll take my brand of psychosis over Lisa Logan's brand of psychosis. I'll take my brand of psychosis over James Lindsay's brand of psychosis. And now, if you guys want to see a counter to that, if you guys want to see actual far leftists, if you guys want to see actual Antifa, let's get into our show, shall we? Let's get into our show. As a reminder, guys, please mount that like button. Please make sure you are subscribed to the channel, because now that I have shown you the psychotic wing of the anti-woke movement, I just want everyone to appreciate me and the service that I offer you a little bit more, because what we're going to be doing for the remainder of the stream is we are going to be watching, or listening to rather, actual documents that are written by Antifa. These are written by an organization called CrimethInc. CrimethInc is one of like the publishing arms of Antifa. They publish zines, they publish pamphlets, things like that talk about their ideology. You can find a lot of this stuff online. The first thing we're going to be listening to is called Breaking Consensus from Breaking with Consensus Reality. There we go. Maybe a little dyslexia on my part. From the politics of consent to the seduction of revolution. And I want everyone to keep in mind, I want everyone to compare what we are about to listen to, which is a primary source Antifa document, with the lunacy that we just saw in Lisa Logan's Twitter thread, okay? Well, you don't have to pay late fees, bad cat, but if you want to, you can. Yeah, notice this was all trust me, bro, just like everything James Lindsay does. Yep. Well, we're going to get into the real stuff now, guys. Let's get this party started.
Of consent to the seduction of revolution. Written by CrimethInc in 2012.
2012. There's no captions.
Section 1. Is consent enough? We who fight to create a freer world face a fundamental contradiction. On one hand, we don't want to become a vanguard, quote-unquote, leading or imposing our will on others, as that would run counter to our anti-authoritarian values. On the other hand, we believe with good justification that our political goals, including the destruction of capitalism, the state, and hierarchy, can't...
It's almost like when you listen to actual communists and socialists, they say that they're trying to destroy capitalism, literally in the first sentence of their document. This is what actual communists sound like, guys. They don't sound like woo-woo new age spiritualists who have gotten themselves sucked into some sort of cult. This is Antifa. Antifa are all anarcho-communists.
On the other hand, we believe with good justification that our political goals, including the destruction of capitalism, the state, and hierarchy, can't be accomplished without strategies that are currently unpalatable to most of our fellow citizens. The impoverishment of millions and the destruction of our ecosystems demand that we act decisively. What criteria will equip us to challenge these systems without resorting to the authoritarian means we condemn? Some of us have developed a practice of prioritizing consent as a provisional answer to this dilemma. This discourse comes to us through educators who promote it as a tool for fostering mutual...
No. Wrong. No. Do not lie to my audience. No. All Antifa are anarcho-communists. Not all... Excuse me. Not all revolutionary socialists are Antifa, but all Antifa are anarcho-communists, and we are listening to Antifa. Do not confuse my audience. You're going to argue with me in my chat? You can sit in a timeout. If you want to come back and keep arguing with me in my chat, you'll be banned. I think that person that I just banned is actually Antifa. That person's not a regular on my channel. That person's like I'm an anti-fascist, but I'm totally not Antifa, bro. Like, that person that I just put in timeout is an actual leftist. I promise you. Would you say the anarcho-communists are basically the same? No, I wouldn't say they're okay, guys. All Antifa are anarcho-communists. They are far-left revolutionary communists. Not all far-left revolutionary communists and socialists are Antifa, but all far-left revolutionary socialists, all far-left, let me start again. All Antifa are far-left revolutionary socialists. They're anarcho-communists, but not all anarcho-communists who are revolutionary socialists are Antifa. Please don't make me say that again.
Truly respectful sexuality in the midst of a rape culture. Applying this model in our intimate relationships and beyond, we seek to respect others' autonomy by not subjecting them to actions that violate their consent. That is, by staying within the boundaries of others' desires as they determine and articulate them. We reject coercion of any form, whether physical, verbal, economic, or otherwise, and assert our self-determination to participate in or abstain from whatever we choose. Yet outside of the sexual realm, consent discourse doesn't always offer a sufficient framework with which to evaluate direct action tactics and strategy. Knowing whether an action is consensual may not suffice to indicate whether it is effective or worthwhile. Aware that most people oppose some of our tactics, we don't plan our actions on the basis of consent, yet we don't aspire to become a vanguard either. Furthermore, since we can only desire on the basis of what we know, we are unlikely to achieve liberation from simply fulfilling the desires we have now without changing the conditions that produced them. So how else might we conceive of our political project if not through the lens of consent? A close examination of our activities reveals that in setting out to foment insurrection and transform society, we appear to be operating according to a logic of seduction.
Did they just say that they're setting out to foment they flat out said they're setting out to foment insurrection and transform society. Golly gee.
Activities reveals that in setting out to foment insurrection and transform society, we appear to be operating according to a logic of seduction. Are we prepared to accept the implications of this reframing? Let's begin by examining the politics of consent and their limitations. Section 1. Is consent enough? At first glance, the notion of basing our political practice on a theory of consent makes intuitive sense. What's our critique of the state? It's a body that wields power over us even to the point of life and death, and yet no one ever asked us if we wanted to be governed. Elections don't even begin to offer us the meaningful alternatives true consent would require. It's been said before, our desires will never fit in their ballot boxes. We promote the principle of...
Well, yes, because they believe that the Constitution is a capitalist document, remember? They believe that the government is a capitalist government, so yeah.
Voluntary association, the freedom to form whatever groups and collectives we want without being compelled to participate in any. We never had the chance to say no to capitalism, to government, to police, to all the systems of hierarchy.
But they just literally said it. Did you guys hear that?
We want without being compelled to participate in any. We never had the chance to say no to capitalism, to government, to police, to all the systems of hierarchy that impose their rule. So clearly those can't be consensual in any meaningful way. As we do away with the coercive systems that dominate our lives, we can reconstruct new social relations based on consent, a world in which no one controls anyone else, in which we can determine our own destinies. It makes sense, doesn't it? Certainly, this discourse of consent offers a compelling way to imagine the world we want to live in. But how does it serve as a strategy for dislodging this one? It's difficult to envision a political practice that stringently respects the consent of all people, while simultaneously destroying the fabric of our hierarchical society. If we insist on the unity of means and ends, we have to dismantle coercive institutions and social relationships through non-coercive processes to build a non-coercive society. Abandoning this vision could undermine the very basis of our anarchism.
When they're saying coercive, they mean capitalism. Everyone knows that, right? Hang on. Okay, so you're new here. So what doesn't make sense to you? And by the way, guys, if you're new to listening to socialism with me, if you're new to listening to this stuff, it's going to sound like it doesn't make sense. The reason that it sounds like it doesn't make sense, bro, actually, you're getting banned. Go away. We don't allow Antifa to come into the chat and lie to people, because they just they do it like communists do this all the time in my chat. They come in and they're like, that's not what we really believe. And I'm like, we're watching your document on the screen right now. They're like, no, but that's not what we really believe. And they're just doing it to try to confuse people. So we just ban them. So if you are new to watching socialism with me, it might seem like it doesn't make sense, but it does make sense. The reason it doesn't make sense to you is you haven't learned how to speak their language yet. That's not an insult. That's just me saying that okay, but what is your specific question? You can't just say the last couple paragraphs. We can go back, I guess, and listen from the start, but what specifically is not making sense to you? And I welcome questions from anyone who is new, but you've got to be specific in your questions, because if you just say the whole thing doesn't make sense, the answer I'm going to give you is honestly, you need to listen to more, because the more you listen to it will start to make sense. But if you have a very specific question, we can tell you what's going on. So what is your question? Or you might not know. And if you don't know what your question is, that's fine. But if you don't know what your question is, then what I need you to do, and I'm not trying to be mean, I'm trying to help you, is I need you to just sit back and listen. Because this is one of those things that it's not going to click for you right away, probably. This takes a little bit of time. So do you have a specific question, or would you like to just sit back and listen for a while? Either is fine. I think you're getting really stuck on the labels, and I would recommend you stop getting stuck on the labels. Because you're overthinking something. No, that's not what I said. You're not listening to what I said. I explicitly said multiple times that not all anarcho-communists are Antifa. Explicitly. So I need you to listen. Stop overthinking this. Yeah. I guess so. All right, let's go back a little bit, and maybe we can start. Let's just go back, okay? You know what? I'm just going to go back to the start. We're going to start at the start. We're going to listen to the whole thing again. If people have specific questions, I want you to ask your very specific questions. If people don't understand what's being said, then please, speak up.
Despite the sick, despite the fever, I wanted to throw one out there. So here we go. It's called Breaking with Consensus Reality. From the Politics of Consent to the Seduction of Revolution. Written by Crime Think
I'll try to break it down a
2012.
little bit more.
Section 1. Is consent enough? We who fight to create a freer world face a fundamental contradiction.
Okay, we're gonna pause here. I'm gonna try to break this down a little bit more for people who are new. When they say a freer world, they mean a world free of capitalism. Okay? Everything the far left does is about abolishing capitalism. They specifically define capitalism as private property ownership. By private property, they mean your ability to own a home, your ability to own land, your ability to own an apartment rental that you rent out as a landlord, your ability to own intellectual property, your ability to own a business of any size, big or small. Your parental rights are considered to be a form of private property. Your individual liberties are considered to be a form of private property. This is not about crony capitalism. This is not about corrupt capitalism. This is only and explicitly about private property ownership. In order to understand the left, you have got to understand this. What your definition is of capitalism does not matter. Anything that gives people the ability to generate wealth is considered to be a form of private property that will be abolished when socialists abolish capitalism. I'm going to pause there because we've already listened to the first 5 minutes of this. So we know we know there's a lot of references to capitalism. And I want to see if anyone has questions about that. Yes, you're also going to hear references to hierarchy. They believe that capitalism creates all hierarchies. A hierarchy is the difference between the haves and the have-nots, the bourgeois and the proletariat, the oppressor and the oppressed, the normative and the queer, okay? This is what capitalism creates. It creates hierarchies where some people have access to more resources than others. What Marxism does is it flattens the hierarchy and gives everyone access to all of the same resources. So we're going to do a pause. Does anyone have questions about any of that? And I'm looking in the chat on Rumble. I'm looking in the chat on Kick just to make sure. If you don't understand this point, please ask a question because this is the most important thing that you need to understand what they're saying in this document, okay? Okay, so now we're getting, so I appreciate you saying this. The hierarchy part is more what I was questioning. So now you understand capitalism creates all hierarchies. Capitalism creates a world in which some people make more money than other people, in which some people have more access to resources than other people. And what they want to do is get rid of all the hierarchies. Their actions remind me of another group that call themselves accelerationists. I mean, I guess it would depend on how you're defining accelerationist. I can't say for sure because I don't know what group you're talking about. All right, let's keep going.
On one hand, we don't want to become a vanguard, quote-unquote, leading or imposing our will on others, as that would run counter to our anti-authoritarian values. On the other hand, we believe with good justification that our political goals, including the destruction of capitalism, the state, and hierarchy, can't be accomplished without strategies that are currently unpalatable to most of our fellow citizens. The impoverishment of millions and the destruction of our ecosystems demand that we act decisively. What criteria will equip us to challenge these systems without resorting to the authoritarian means we condemn? Some of us have developed a practice of prioritizing consent as a provisional answer to this dilemma. This discourse comes to us through educators who promote it as a tool for fostering mutually respectful sexuality in the midst of a rape culture.
Okay, but what about this part is confusing? You need to be very specific in your questions. If you aren't specific in your questions, I really can't help you. I'm sorry.
Applying this model in our intimate relationships and beyond, we seek to respect others' autonomy by not subjecting them to actions that violate their consent. That is, by staying within the boundaries of others.
What they're saying by consent is that essentially what they're saying is we want to abolish capitalism because we believe that capitalism creates all hierarchies, but in order to abolish capitalism, we're going to have to use methods to do that most people are going to find uncomfortable and they aren't going to agree to. So what they're saying is You know, we know that in order to give people freedom, to liberate people from this oppressive system, we have to abolish capitalism, but people are not going to go along with the means that we have to do in order to do that. Because remember, this is Antifa. These are violent militants. These are the people who say the ends justify the means. Okay? So what they're saying is we need to engage in tactics that most people are not going to go along with because it's for the greater good. Does everyone understand that? You're doing great, Simona. Just lean into it. It's okay. You don't need to pick up everything in one day, guys. You really don't. If it's still confusing, it's because this stuff takes time to learn, okay? Nope, they're not saying that. Nope. Nope, that's not what they're saying. Cool. Awesome.
Others' desires as they determine and articulate them. We reject coercion of any form, whether physical, verbal, economic, or otherwise, and assert our self-determination to participate in or abstain from whatever we choose. Yet outside of the sexual realm, consent discourse doesn't always offer a sufficient framework with which to evaluate direct action tactics and strategy. Knowing whether an action is consensual may not suffice to indicate whether it is effective or worthwhile. Aware that most people oppose some of our tactics, we don't plan our actions on the basis of consent.
We don't plan our actions on the basis of consent. So they're like, we know most people are going to oppose us, but we don't really give a fuck because our actions are liberating people from the oppressive force of capitalism.
Yet we don't aspire to become a vanguard either. Furthermore, since we can only desire on the basis of what we know, we are unlikely to achieve liberation from simply fulfilling the desires we have now without changing the conditions that produced them. So how else might we conceive of our political project if not through the lens of consent? A close examination of our activities reveals that in setting out to foment insurrection and transform society, we appear to be operating according to a logic of seduction. Are we prepared
to liberate society means to liberate it from the oppressive force of capitalism, to free it from the oppressive force of capitalism?
Accept the implications of this reframing? Let's begin by examining the politics of consent and their limitations. Section 1. Is consent enough? At first glance, the notion of basing our political practice on a theory of consent makes intuitive sense. What's our critique of the state? It's a body that wields power over us even to the point of life and death, and yet no one ever asked us if we wanted to be governed. Elections don't even begin to...
Are they saying people didn't consent to capitalism, so they should... I don't know if that's exactly... They're definitely saying that no one consented to capitalism. I don't... Let's put a pin in this one, bot, and let's see if this is where this goes. I don't know yet.
Offer us the meaningful alternatives true consent would require. It's been said before, our desires will never fit in their ballot boxes. We promote the principle of voluntary association, the freedom to form whatever groups and collectives we want without being compelled to participate in any. We never had the chance to say no to capitalism, to government, to police, to all the systems of hierarchy that impose their rule. So clearly, those can't be consensual in any meaningful way. As we do away with the coercive systems that dominate our lives, we can reconstruct new social relations based on consent, a world in which no one controls anyone else, in which we can determine our own destinies. It makes sense, doesn't it? Certainly, this discourse of consent offers a compelling way to imagine the world we want to live in. But how does it serve as a strategy for dislodging this one? It's difficult to envision a political practice that stringently respects the consent of all people, while simultaneously destroying the fabric of our hierarchical society. If we insist on the unity of means and ends, we have to dismantle coercive institutions and social relationships.
Coercive institutions means capitalism. Social relationships is looking at is looking at capitalism as a social system, as a cultural system, rather than as an economic model. Because remember, capitalism is both an economic system and a cultural model.
Through non-coercive processes to build a non-coercive society. Abandoning this vision could undermine the very basis of our anarchism. Yet if we don't succeed in dislodging capitalism and the state, the bases of economic and political coercion, we'll never arrive at a society in which a consent-based framework could actually be tenable. How can we resolve these dilemmas? Let's look more closely at what we mean by consent and how it operates in our society and in our movements. Section 2.
Well, I mean, they believe that anarchy is a form of like anarcho-communism is still socialism. Anarcho-communism is communism. So you're right, they're not calling for socialism, they're calling for communism. In an anarcho-communist society, there would be no private property. Everything would belong to everyone. And there would still be, guys, when they're saying, I want to be clear about this too, when they're saying the state, they're saying the current capitalist U.S. government. You already heard them call it the capitalist government in this presentation. They're saying the current government that we have. That's not to say there's not going to be some sort of decision-making apparatus like a community council or something like that. That's not to say there's not going to be Gestapo and things like that. There probably will be, but they want to abolish the current form of government. When they say the state, they're talking about the current form of government. And they believe if we set up an advisory council, that's not really the state. That's socialism. So people are elected by the community. So they think that like whatever leadership council they set up is not run by the state, because the state is the capitalist U.S. government. Does everyone understand that? I'm looking for a yes or no in the chat. Does everyone understand that? Well, yeah, they're saying we're gonna establish some sort of consensual apparatus that everyone agrees to. It would be democracy. Exactly. Okay, people understand. Cool.
Consensus reality, nonviolence, liberal consent. Reader's note, brief content warning for a vague reference to pedophilia.
Oh!
Power and consent
What?
are critically intertwined. Power imbalances make it difficult or impossible to give consent freely. Can a much older person have consensual sex with a very young person? Can someone who is subjected to another's economic control freely consent to that person's desire?
You know, the irony there is that's anti-pedophile. That's not in favor of pedophilia. That's opposing pedophilia, what just happened.
For consent to be meaningful, it must be possible to say no anytime and for any reason on one's own terms. When the state monopolizes the use of force and the economy controls access to our very means of survival, we cannot meaningfully choose. We call the boundaries enclosing our ability to consent under these conditions consensus reality. Consensus reality is the range of possible thought and action within a system of power relations. It is enforced not only through traditional institutions of control, such as mass media, religion, and the family, but also through the innumerable subtle norms manifested in common sense, civil discourse, and day-to-day life. It isn't simply the aggregate of all our desires melded together in a great compromise that allows us all to get along, as democratic mythology would have it. Consensus reality constitutes the ruling class's coordinated attempt to uphold their dominance and our exploitation as efficiently as possible. Capitalist democracy secures that efficiency. It is the system that currently provides the largest number of people with incentive to participate in their own exploitation.
Whoa!
It offers us a series.
Capitalist democracy provides the largest number of people a way to participate in the system of their own exploitation. Because the far left believes that the founding of the United States was based on capitalist oppression. They believe the Constitution is an oppressive document that was designed to uphold capitalism. They believe that in order to win, they need to turn people against the Constitution. We found that clip last week on Socialism Saturday. So that's what they're saying there.
Classes' coordinated attempt to uphold their dominance and our exploitation as efficiently as possible. Capitalist democracy secures that efficiency. It is the system that currently provides the largest number of people with incentive to participate in their own exploitation. It offers us a series of meaningless options to disguise a profound lack of agency over our own lives. The trump card of capitalist democracy is the idea that everyone's consent is respected in a marketplace of ideas within which desires can be freely expressed and influenced. We can argue that this marketplace isn't truly free. Corporations control the mass media, some views get more airtime than others. Thus, the consent is not fully informed, but this doesn't get at the heart of things. Obviously, equal access to means of influence on a level playing field is impossible in capitalist society. But it is the systems of power, not just speech, that determine the framework within which we experience reality. All political systems, whether anarchist, fascist, or democratic, produce particular patterns of social relations. Mere discussion of these systems does not. It cannot transcend the framework in which it occurs. Footnote 1 here reads, for instance, within capitalist democracy, the very ability to speak quote-unquote freely seems to offer proof of the system's justice by virtue of the state ensuring quote-unquote free speech. In anarchic social relations, our ability to speak freely justifies itself, needing no state to protect it. To quote-unquote protect it or define its limits. When we frame expressing our desires as quote-unquote exercising a right, we define our legitimacy to act in terms of our relationship to the state, rather than asserting that our desires are inherently valid.
Well, yeah, because the Mary Nardini gang is Antifa. I mean, I would bet all the money in my bank account that that they are one and the same. They were talking. Mary Nardini gang was talking about bashback. Bashback is Antifa.
Continuing on the main block of text, free speech discourse offers each of us our own box of colored chalk to decorate the cement blocks around our feet and calls that freedom. Whether we can walk away doesn't even enter into the picture. Our experience of what we are and aren't able to do determines our sense of what is possible, far more than our ideas and discourses. To shift the boundaries of our imagination and desires, we have to find ways to make new experiences possible beyond the bounds of consensus reality. Take, for example, the debates about violence and nonviolence that rage in every organizing coalition and Occupy movement. What is violence? At first glance, the term seems to have no more coherence than the Supreme Court definition of obscenity. I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. This makes it an especially dangerous tool when wielded by liberals to control group norms. But recalling that violence springs from the same root as violation helps us get at the meaning behind how the word is used. What is called violence is any violation of norms about legitimate use of force, norms dictated by the state and incorporated into our consensus reality. The debate about violence is really a coded discourse in which nonviolence stands in for consent. When we attempt to make space for autonomy and diversity of tactics, our opponents perceive us as disregarding consent simply for opposing the terms of consensus reality. Observe how an anxious liberal from our local Occupy movement, dismayed by an illegal building occupation undertaken by autonomous occupiers, strives to distance the Occupy group from the occupation. He says to a reporter, quote, "Our movement is nonviolent, it's peaceful, it does not break the law," unquote. The building occupation involved no physical violence, nor damage to property, nor anything that could be construed as violent even within his own definition, whereas the eviction by rifle-wielding thugs was violent enough to shock people across the political spectrum. How can we make sense of this seeming contradiction? It seems that the meaningful sense of violence here is a rupture of consensus reality. This liberal wishes to communicate that the building occupation felt like a violation of his consent. Why? Because it was related to a current in which he felt invested, yet he had not been invited to participate in decision-making, and it involved actions that he personally disdained. Of course, we undertook the occupation autonomously precisely for that reason. We knew we could never achieve consensus in the public general assemblies to do something that so dramatically challenged consensus reality. Whether or not the occupation hurt anyone was besides the point. Its quote-unquote violence had less to do with its literal effects than its challenge to consensus reality. To him, such a challenge constituted a violation of collective consent. Let's call this liberal consent. The notion that we must adhere tactically to the most conservative common denominator or else violate others' consent. We all have to put up with this system, so the logic goes, whether we chose it or not, because any violation would put us all at risk. This goes beyond a critique of representation. You shouldn't carry out an action on my behalf without my consent. To a critique of autonomy, since literally any action that presumes affinity with others is subject to the boundaries dictated by consensus reality. This is the risk of embracing a framework of political consent. Within this logic, the most moderate elements of any group or coalition will dominate by virtue of their alignment with consensus reality. What's okay for anybody is based on what's okay for everybody, which makes our strategies for changing this world look suspiciously similar to the world we're trying to change. If we do, in fact, desire a radical break with what exists, let's not trap ourselves in a framework aligned with the systems we want to destroy.
Oh, hey.
Nonviolence is the only...
Mark's Lives over on Rumble. Mark's Lives, rather. So over on Rumble says, hey, Carlin, I apologize. I'm still watching your part 1 to catch up. Thank you for bringing awareness to the left. People like, what if a history guy, whatever his name is, keeps saying the real danger is from bloodthirsty gripers. Yeah, that guy's an asshole. Thank you for the $5 super chat over on Rumble. I really do appreciate it. That brings our total up to, I have to do math in my head now, $83. That puts us $17 away from the goal, guys. If you want to help me reach my super chat goal, please feel free to do so.
Only ideology that can comprehensively protect consensus reality against the antagonism of all who would transform it. By preemptively condemning anything that exceeds the parameters of civil discourse, it ensures that any resistance will ultimately strengthen the underlying framework of authority, and even passes responsibility for policing on to the loyal opposition. Liberal complicity with violent systems of control can be, quote-unquote, non-violent according to this logic because they accept the boundaries of legitimacy decreed by consensus reality. Just as every pacifist condemns armed struggle and insurrection against the state, the gains of every quote-unquote non-violent movement and revolution they cite.
2 ladies! We have met our goal, guys. Thank you, 2 ladies. I really do appreciate it. We have met our goal, but you guys can still send me money. Don't worry about it. I'll still take it. It's a Friday. Thank you, guys.
From Dr. King to Gandhi rested on a foundation of explicit or threatened state violence. We shake our heads at liberal reluctance to acknowledge that the state is fundamentally rather than incidentally violent, but that violence is woven so seamlessly into consensus reality that it's simple.
Hang on. This is important. Remember, for anyone who's new, you've always got to remember that socialists are not Democrats, socialists are not liberals, socialists are not progressives. What they just said is that liberals basically refuse to acknowledge that the state is inherently violent.
Explicit or threatened state violence. We shake our heads at liberal reluctance to acknowledge that the state is fundamentally rather than incidentally violent.
We shake our heads at the liberal reluctance to acknowledge that the state is fundamentally violent. By state, they mean the capitalist United States government. Sorry, I forgot to send a message, but our support helps keep things rolling. Much love to our family. Hey, I love you guys too. Much love to your daughters, 2 ladies. I appreciate it.
but that violence is woven so seamlessly into consensus reality that it simply doesn't register. The violence so anxiously opposed by liberals is, by definition, that which ruptures consensus reality. And this is precisely why we consider that violence necessary. Framing resistance as registering our quote-unquote dissent does not attack consensus reality, but merely identifies our position within it. There are not opposing partisans within consensus reality, Republicans and Democrats, activists and reactionaries, but only partisans of consensus reality and partisans against it. In short, the liberal notion of consent is a barrier to revolution. By definition,
the liberal notion of consent is a barrier to revolution. That means they're not going to seek your permission to overthrow the government. Does everyone understand that? Christian, thank you. Late to this, I have strong opinions about Antifa. However, I'll keep them myself and listen. Always cute when you ask for extra money. Listen, if anyone wants to send me money, I'm never going to say no. Remember, guys, according to my haters on the internet, I'm broke and I'm unemployable. And remember, no one supports my work, apparently, because you're all me. Everyone's sending me super chats. You guys are all me. Everyone understands that, right? Everyone is me. I am everyone. We are legion. We are everywhere. According to Colin Wright, evolutionary biology PhD.
Consensus reality cannot be consensual. We have to move beyond political consent discourse to imagine liberating strategies for transforming reality. Section 3. Can we rescue the political discourse of consent? So, liberal consent is a tool for defending consensus reality, useless to our project of liberation, but that doesn't necessarily mean we have to give up on the discourse of consent itself. Are there ways to respond to these objections within a consent-based framework? Let's explore some of the possible responses to liberal consent rhetoric. Decision-making should be weighted to prioritize the most affected. According to this principle, the greater the impact a decision will have on a person, the more leverage he or she should have in the decision-making process. For instance, the opinions of a poor neighborhood's long-term residents should count for more than those of developers or wealthier newcomers when determining whether to build new condominiums. Thus, how consensual an action is depends not on whether every citizen equal under the law would check yes or no about it on a ballot. Rather, individuals' feelings are weighted proportionally according to how the consequences will impact them. This sidesteps some of the problems of negotiating political consent across power differentials. It looks attractive as a way to navigate conflicting priorities in a society based on values beyond the profit motive, but does this principle offer us useful guidance on how to get there? We can't easily determine who will be most affected by strategies intended to create unpredictable situations so as to open up the horizon for transformation. Some activists see those most vulnerable to the potential consequences of militant tactics as the most impacted by any escalation beyond the confines of consensus reality politics. In practice, this concern can function to impose a tactical conservatism, reproducing the effect of liberal consensus and creating a dichotomy between resisting effectively and prioritizing others' safety. Footnote 2. This has happened again and again and again from the post-inauguration march through Adams Morgan in Washington, D.C. in 2005 to the Oscar Grant riots. Anytime collective action...
Do I use StreamYard? Yes, I do. If you could take super chats through StreamYard and lose... So, I mean, like, I have other ways I can take super chats, but people like sending them through YouTube, to be honest, or through Rumble. So, listen, the number one, if you guys want me to get the most money, the number one way you can support the work is by heading over to my Substack, which is carlin.substack.com, signing up for membership, $8 a month, $80 a year. You can gift memberships if you already have one. You can donate memberships if you already have one, stuff like that. And so, yeah, does YouTube take a higher cut? Yeah, but it's also like, I know that it's just a tool that people like to use. And so I kind of like, whatever you guys want to use is fine. Maybe I can look into setting up super chats in a different way. I don't know, but like, you know, you kind of like, I've always found it works best to use the system that you can, but I'll actually get, What will actually make me the most money? P.S. What will actually make me the most money is if you head over to the Unwoke art store and you get yourself some nice merch. This will actually probably make me the most money. Also, it gives you guys something cool as well. Check it out. Some people have been posting their merch lately. We've got our yard sign. We've got our first yard sign in the wild. Vince has got the Marxist Utopia of the Dead t-shirt. He's looking very dapper there. We've got these mugs that someone bought, and they brought them into work to put them in the mug collection at work. We got the Marxist Utopia of the Dead mug. We've got the Karl Marx. These look fucking good, man. These are all part of my special limited edition Halloween collection. We got the yard sign right there. We've got our Halloween collection with 4 exclusive anti-communist Halloween designs on t-shirts, on sweatshirts, on pint glasses, on mugs, on stickers. And again, check that out. Those are some cool ass mugs, man. Come on. Does anyone have cooler merch than me on the internet? So honestly, guys, if you really want me to get the most bang for your buck with your donation, I really do appreciate it. Sign up for my Substack, sign up for a membership on my Substack, or go buy some merch. If you want to send me in super chats because you want your message displayed on the screen, you want to support the stream I'm doing, I do appreciate that as well. Beggars can't be choosers, whatever you guys want to do to support the work I'm doing, all I can say is thank you. You allow me to do what I do, and I really do appreciate it. But go buy some merch. It looks cool. And if you buy merch, send me a picture of it, because I love to see it.
And fully pacified.
All right, I'll work on that.
People who are more vulnerable.
Yeah, I actually do have Power Chat set up. Actually, you can find my Power Chat link in the description below. The problem is, I can't display it on the screen, so I don't really promote it all that much, but I do actually have a Power Chat set up.
To state violence or other potential consequences of escalation, and more often self-appointed spokespeople whose privilege enables them to feel entitled to represent others, speak out against militant tactics. Since many anarchist agitators are shielded in part by the privileges of white skin, a male body, no children, and legal citizenship, it is held to be irresponsible to raise the stakes without the input of more vulnerable people who may be affected. Anarchists often counter that those shielded by privilege are precisely the ones who should put their bodies on the line. But in large, mixed crowds with a potential for explosive conflict, the question of consent inevitably rears its head. Self-righteous leftists assume that the purpose of massing in the streets is simply to, quote, speak truth to power, unquote. But the rest of us have to grapple with how to precipitate conflict in ways that don't reinforce the wedges our enemies would derive between us, quote-unquote, bad protesters and our
So you just heard them say, right? They're trying to precipitate conflict.
Potential comrades. Returning to the main text. On the other hand, in trying to legitimize our efforts according to this principle, we sometimes fall into the trap of using the example of a few individuals who support an action to stand in for an entire imagined demographic. We ascribe a mythical authenticity to specific local, working class, indigenous, or other people who express enthusiasm for our activities, implicitly writing off those who don't. We make such supporters into a sort of prosthesis for ourselves that entitles us to act against the ostensible majority, imagining our chosen comrades to represent the most affected. Every activist has a preferred imaginary friend, whether the workers favored by IWW organizers, the West Virginia locals courted by opponents of mountaintop removal, or the extras in hip-hop videos that insurrectionists hope will join them in the streets. This is not only tokenizing but dangerous, as it can lead us to overestimate popular support for our actions, yet it is supported by a variety of rationalizations. Just because we don't see public support doesn't mean it isn't there. The people who are most marginalized, who we assume are most likely to support our unpopular actions, are the least free to express that support publicly, and so on. There is some truth in these arguments, but when we gamble on this imaginary friend fantasy as an effort to weigh by proxy the consent of the unrepresented, now represented by our presumed affinity with them, we are just deluding ourselves. Decision-making must be broadened to include all the people impacted. Often, many of those who will be impacted by supposedly consensual decisions do not have appropriate leverage on them. For instance, the university's board of governors can decide by consensus to raise tuition. But what kind of consensus is that without the participation of the students who will be paying it? If decisions included all stakeholders and elites couldn't impose them by force, wouldn't there be hope for a politics of consent? Unfortunately, this framework is more useful for preventing actions or challenging their validity after the fact than for initiating them. The impacts of our actions ripple out far beyond our ability to trace them or the range of lives they will touch. We cannot even hope to be aware of every person who would be impacted by a decision, much less solicit meaningful input from each of them to confirm or deny consensus. In practical terms, expanding the participation in decision-making to everyone affected would either require resorting to majority-rule democracy, not a consent-based framework, or accepting the impossibility of ever making decisions. Here, we have to confront the reality that broad consensus on many issues will never exist. We might be able to agree about what to cook for dinner, but on the real questions about how to organize society and distribute resources, no consensus is possible today. In a class society stratified by white supremacy and patriarchy, our interests are fundamentally in conflict.
Both white supremacy and patriarchy means capitalism. If people have questions about that, please let me know. If no one has questions about that, great, I don't have to explain it. But if you do have questions about it, please let me know. Again, patriarchy means capitalism. Capitalism created the patriarchy. White supremacy also means capitalism because they believe capitalism created white supremacy.
Certainly, we share many interests in common, and we can imagine worlds in which people aren't pitted against one another in contests for status and survival. But we will not be able to desert this world by consensus. Footnote 3. One of the implications of this analysis is that we must unflinchingly recognize conflict as a reality. The vision we're putting forward aims not just to create a world in which all is consensual. We strive to prioritize each other's consent as much as possible, while recognizing that sometimes we really are in conflict and we have to acknowledge conflicts rather than sweeping them under the rug of an imposed consensus. Our ideal is not a world without conflict, but a world in which conflicts don't produce hierarchies and oppression. We envision associations that...
We don't envision a world without conflict. We just don't want hierarchies and oppression. That, of course, means capitalism.
Can come together and break apart according to our desires. Unlike the state, these would require no imposed consensus. End footnote 3. The next response is, we are acting in self-defense. As this reasoning goes, the operation of oppressive institutions constitutes an attack on us.
Hang on. Patriarchy is when capitalism put women in the home to do the unpaid domestic labor and childbearing and gave men. Yes, exactly right. Patriarchy and the gender binary are the same thing. Great definition. So now they're saying that everything they're doing is actually in self-defense.
The next response is, we are acting in self-defense. As this reasoning goes, the operation of oppressive institutions constitutes an attack on us, and we don't need the consent of our attackers to defend ourselves. This harm isn't always on a literal, direct individual level, as in that specific Starbucks window makes my individual life increasingly precarious and impossible. In a hopelessly complex global economy that masks the root causes of the harm it creates, nearly any attempt to launch a defensive counterattack will seem either symbolic or misdirected. Still, in this sense, direct action can be framed as defending ourselves against violations of our consent by state and capital. But the rhetoric of direct action as self-defense doesn't offer us much guidance for how to move forward. In this model, state and capital are the protagonists and the various formulations of we that we self-defend the mere objects of their actions. We can only react, not strategize new initiatives. Furthermore, the framework of self-defense is based in the terms of liberal individualism, with our private personal rights beginning where those of another end.
Oh, liberal. This is why individual liberties are considered to be a form of private property ownership, because if you have individual liberties that is not supporting the collective environment, that is supporting individual achievement means what? Hierarchy. If you have some individuals that are achieving more than other individuals, that creates a hierarchy. So you eliminate individual rights, you eliminate individual liberties, that's going to eliminate the hierarchy. And they call this, what they call it, liberal like individualism, because liberal means capitalist.
More, the framework of self-defense is based in the terms of liberal individualism, with our private personal rights beginning where those of another end. What is it that we're defending? Our role in society as defined under capitalism and patriarchy? Our rights as dictated by the democratic state? To get free, we should be fighting to destroy ourselves. Not our bodies and lives, of course, but our selfhood as it's constituted by state and capital. If selfhood extends as far as the bank windows, if our selves overlap...
That's interesting. That's interesting. They believe the self is created by capitalism because we live in a capitalist society, and that means that I look like I'm like slouching in my chair. I'm just not. My camera's like at a weird angle or something. Like, so they believe that the self is created by capitalism. And so if we abolish capitalism, that will abolish the self construct that we've created. Again,
we should be fighting to destroy ourselves. Not our bodies and lives, of course, but our selfhood as it's constituted by state and capital.
See?
If selfhood extends as far as the bank windows, if our selves overlap so extensively, we need another framework. We're not just defending ourselves.
Yeah.
At best, self-defense is a justification, not a praxis. At worst, it's a disingenuous smokescreen that leaves us without a framework to evaluate our effectiveness. Next response is consent has to be informed. In all consent-based ethical systems, medical, sexual, and otherwise, authentic consent requires full knowledge of the implications of a decision. On the political level, this criticism goes, if we all had access to complete information, we would make decisions differently. This is the basic hypothesis of liberalism. The best of all possible worlds will result when people have access to all relevant information and the means to discuss it openly in order to make rational decisions. The fatal flaw in this reasoning is that it fails to take power dynamics into account. When access to money and property determines our ability to act under the rule of a state that reserves the sole right to employ violence, knowledge is not in fact power. Furthermore, it seems to demand a politics of total transparency, which would either preclude illegal activity or consign us all to the certainty of prison. An informed consent framework neither enables us to imagine how to achieve a consensus for revolution, nor suffices to determine how much information to share with whom about the actions we take to fight for it. In concluding that the consent framework can't accommodate our political needs, we are not endorsing the violation of consent. Rather, we are acknowledging that the consent framework has not been sufficient to transcend the self-defeating dichotomy between either respecting consent to such an extent that we can't overthrow capitalism, or disregarding it entirely. The point is to come up with a framework that solves those problems, not throw out what gains we've made already. Footnote 4. Also, what does this imply in the realm of sexuality? Remember, our goal in acknowledging the limitations of consent discourse is not to discard it entirely, but to determine where it can take us, and where else we need to go. Consent provides us with crucial tools for treating each other with care in sexual interactions. At the same time, we can challenge simplistic notions of desire. Some of our most deeply erotic moments occur not when we finally achieve a desire previously fixed within us, but when we experience unexpected and unprecedented forms of pleasure. Perhaps insights from our discourse of political seduction can offer perspective on our sexuality, but we maintain our allegiance to consent discourse and sex. Our critique of political consent discourse isn't abstract, but based on its tactical shortcomings. the limitations of what it allows us to do and imagine. By contrast, sexual consent discourse has proven its utility in our daily lives, inducing us to examine our desires and transform how we relate to each other erotically. End footnote 4. In fact, our basis for opposing capitalism and hierarchy goes far beyond the claim that these systems operate without our consent. Ultimately, we fight for new worlds out of desire. And in order to move beyond the limitations of political consent discourse, we have to look more closely at what desire is. Section 4. Desire, Consent, and Politics. What is desire?
Hang on.
Let's conceive of desires not as...
Hang on. This shit is kind of terrifying. Yeah, now just keep in mind that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of things just like this on the internet that we have not listened to yet. When you know where to look for this stuff, you can find it. You can find so much of it. It's like conservatives are convinced, or right-leaning people are convinced this is just like happening in some small, far-off corner and there's not a lot of it and people aren't paying attention to it. There's so much of this shit on the internet. It's all over anarchist websites. They have all of these YouTube channels that have this stuff. And again, you have to know how to look for it. It's not just going to pop up if you don't look for it. But once you know how to find it, it's like, I mean, ask Reagan about how many, Reagan has been going down this zine rabbit hole lately. And I haven't talked about this publicly, but I've seen what she's doing behind the scenes. Once you go down the fucking zine rabbit hole, you know, someone told me yesterday, Constantine Kissen thinks that all this started in the 80s. And I was like, Constantine Kissen's a moron. Do you want to know why? Because the first anti-capitalist zine was published in 1964. It's like, once you find you have to hunt for the treasure troves, but once you find the treasure trove, it is immense. The amount of stuff that you find. And then you find that it's been going on since the 60s. And no one noticed. And people still aren't talking about it. No one else is reading this stuff, guys. No one else is looking at this stuff that I know of. If I'm wrong, I always say this. If I am wrong and there are other people looking at this stuff and there are other people researching this stuff, then tell me who they are, because I want to talk to them. And I'm very serious about that. But no one has ever been able to tell me anyone else who's looking at this stuff like we are. So I have to assume, until someone gives me a name, that no one else is researching this stuff the way we are. And that should, quite frankly, terrify everyone. That should terrify everyone. People want to know why I have an attitude and I have hubris and I say, yeah, my shit is better than everyone else's. You want to know why? I'm literally the only person doing this publicly that I know of. If I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong, but give me a name. And until that happens, then I'm going to have the hubris of being like, yeah, I'm the only fucking person doing this publicly. I'm sorry. I've earned it. I've been doing this shit for years. The right is nothing but lazy, failed comedians.
As internal elements emanating from within individuals, but as autonomous forces that flow through them. Individuals don't desire things. Whole societies produce and circulate desires, even if those desires remain submerged in most people. The fundamental unit of our analysis is not the individual human being, but the desire, with humans as the medium.
What?
How can we conceive of desire and selfhood as they relate to consent and political action? The existing consent discourse presupposes static notions of self and desire. It presumes that desire is monolithic, composed of a single thrust rather than multiple pulls in different directions.
Thank you, Simona.
When we have
I'm
multiple
honored by
desires,
that.
the desire
Thank
that
you.
garners the plurality in our internal electoral process is assumed to be the only one that counts. Consent discourse presumes that what we want is knowable and can be articulated within the framework of our shared reality. In reality, the desires we experience are not fixed or unitary. They shift constantly based on our experiences and contexts. They are multiple, contradictory, and divergent, surprising us with their diversity, frustrating us with their mutability. They resist our attempts to confine or domesticate them. They simply can't fit into a two-dimensional binary model of consent wherein we either want something or we don't. This realization is terrifying, but it opens up new ways of understanding the revolutionary project in relation to the consensus reality arrayed against us. The nature of desire is complex and centrifugal, in contrast to the simplifying and centripetal nature of interests. The traditional approach of the left is for organizers to assist constituencies in winning victories that build power, which will presumably be deployed towards increasingly radical ends. The goals of these victories are generally framed in terms of the interests of the constituency, not their desires. This is a clever trick, as interests appear to be an objective rather than subjective matter. It is easier for an outside managerial class to get away with defining and representing them. Interests can be framed as unitary, coherent, and integrative, whereas desires are multiple, inchoate, contradictory. Identity groups share interests. Friends and lovers share desires. Interests are composed of calcified blocks of desire, standardized to make sense within consensus reality. Not only is desire far more complex and unstable than our discourses allow, it's also shaped by the conditions of our misery and exploitation. Even amid contradictions and chaos, the range of what is possible to desire rarely escapes the confines of consensus reality. Who really imagines that in a free world we dream of ergonomic chairs for our cubicles, more TV channels and brands of detergent, longer chains and softer cages? This is not to demean the struggles of those who...
They're saying that capitalism has programmed us to want all of those things. And that we don't even know what they're saying is we don't even know what our true desires are because capitalism has programmed us to want all this material stuff. And if we get rid of capitalism, we will get rid of the programming that has driven us to want all this material stuff. And if we do that, we will be able to access our innate desires that were always there, but we just didn't know they were there because we were brainwashed by capitalism. Does everyone understand that? No, it was always like this, but like, listen, you're seeing behind the curtain. You're seeing the real stuff. The reason you thought it wasn't like this is probably because you never saw the real stuff before, right?
Fight for better conditions within this system. It's just to say that we would be paltry revolutionaries, indeed, if we based our programs merely on the consensus desires of groups whose allies we want to be. The task of the revolutionary is not the task of the ally. We are not here to make the dreams of the proletariat come true. The proletariat is produced by capitalism, which we want to destroy.
Bing.
The task of the revolutionary is to shift our collective sense of the possible so that
The proletariat is produced by capitalism, which we want to destroy. Like, come on.
The proletariat is produced by capitalism, which we want to destroy.
The proletariat is produced by capitalism, which we want to destroy. Remember, guys, just yesterday, James Lindsay posted a Twitter thread in which he said that my analysis of the left in terms of capitalism and private property was crude and elementary, and really the left wants to transcend all this, and it is a spiritual battle, and it's all about Gnosticism and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I didn't write that. I didn't create this document. The proletariat is produced by capitalism, which we want to destroy.
The task of the revolutionary is to shift our collective sense of the possible so that our desires and the realities they drive us to create can shift in turn. We are here to transform reality beyond where our notions of consent can lead us. We need a different discourse to imagine the transformations that can open pathways out of consensus reality. Section 5.
Yeah.
Introducing...
Hang on, Gloria, this is a great point. It's not, and they're flat out saying this, right? They're flat out saying in this document, we don't care if the proletariat consents to what we're doing, because what we're doing is in the greatest good of the proletariat. So you're absolutely right. This is not about what the proletariat wants. The proletariat are the worker class, the non-private property owning class. They are tricking the working class into believing communism will give them everything they desire, everything they don't even know they desire yet. If we just overthrow capitalism, everything's going to be great.
Seduction. There's another framework that seems to be implied by our current practice, whether or not we acknowledge it. That framework is seduction. What is seduction? It's a rather unsavory concept, bringing to mind manipulative attempts to induce others to let themselves to be used for one's own end. In a sexual context, it can imply either a romantic, charismatic, persuasive use of charm to propose a sexual encounter, or a way to trick someone into succumbing to one's advances. The connotations are discomforting, but the salient factor is the implication that the seducer creates a desire, rather than simply unearthing it. It is this sense that we find most interesting in considering the problems of desire and consensus reality on the political level. When we seduce, we present someone who ostensibly doesn't want something with a new situation in which they may want it after all. Whereas consent focuses on obtaining the go-ahead for an external action, is this okay? Seduction focuses internally on desire. Quote, could you want this? Unquote. Our practices of seduction don't aim to induce others to do things they don't want to do, but to induce others to want to do them in the most meaningful sense, to want to take on all the risks and pleasures they entail. Again, we don't believe that we can persuade everyone to consent to our dreams of anarchist revolution. Not only is the deck stacked against us, but the dealer, the table, the whole house. We don't buy into the idea that our goals are what everybody quote-unquote really wants, nor do we assume that everyone would adopt our views if only they had access to all the right information. We don't claim to represent anyone beyond ourselves, nor to stand in for any silent majority. In that sense, anarchist revolution is not a democratic project. Nor do we, despairing of those things, decide that to be true to our principles, we must give up on transforming society altogether and retreat into isolation among the few comrades with whom we can establish meaningful, self-determined consensus. We don't think it's hopeless to resist in the face of the stranglehold of consensus reality. We want a different path forward, one that doesn't assume desire to be fixed, that doesn't rely on liberal consent. We neither wish to impose our will on others by force, nor to disregard their desires. Instead, we want to perform a kind of magic, an alchemical operation. We want to induce desires, not simply fulfill them. Footnote 5. Wait, there's nothing liberating about attempting to induce desires in others. That's the function of the advertising industry, the lever of demand that has driven capitalism over the past century. Democracy purports to be a marketplace of ideas where we can all just talk about what we want and then decide. Different configurations of desire are constantly at war. Ad firms don't just create specific desires, they enforce a mode of desiring that can be routed through the consumer economy. Propaganda, subliminal messaging, induced addiction, outright violence, these comprise a brutal arsenal aimed at us every moment of the day. Around the globe, the military clears the path for neoliberal pillaging, while NGOs get into the business of inducing people to want to be successful at generating currencies that can be
The military is a neoliberal capitalistic enforcer.
Exchanged on the global market. Ought we not be suspicious of a project framed in such transparently manipulative terms? As grim as it looks, this vista reveals that if we are not partisans of certain modes of desiring, we will remain objects rather than subjects within these desiring wars. We cannot retreat into essentialist notions of unearthing our quote-unquote true desires from some internal vault, nor a pseudo-Buddhist project of extinguishing desire on an individual level while the world burns. What sets us apart is that we strive to create a world in which every person can realize her unique potential on her own terms, rather than simply pushing for this or that option within the current conditions. End of footnote 5. As anarchists, our greatest strength lies not in the coherence and reason of our ideology, but in the passionate actions we undertake and the ungovernable lives we lead. Let's not try to convert people to anarchism. Let's set out with mischievous glee to infect everyone around us with the anarchy that flows in our veins. Let's produce situations in which anarchy is possible, even likely, even desirable to those who might not feel any inclination towards it today. How did you become an anarchist? Did you emerge from the womb in a black hoodie? Did you, quote-unquote, always know you were going to crave riots, stale bagels, and photocopy scams? If not, chances are you had some sort of experience that opened you to a sense of possibility you hadn't previously been able to imagine. For me, it came at the age 18 during the height of the anti-Iraq war protests when I heard a vague rumor that I should show up at a certain concert. I did, and lo and behold, when it ended, a group of maniacs appeared with drums and banners, and before I knew it, I'd joined 200 others marching in the street. Permits be damned. We were unstoppable. The blood boiled in my veins, and I howled ecstatically until I lost my voice. Things were never the same again. Now, I'd participated in polite, permitted marches before. If you'd asked me if I desired to go on a feisty, unpermitted midnight march, I probably would have thought it sounded cool, but I didn't actively desire it beforehand. If I'd been forthrightedly invited, I might have declined out of anxiousness or indifference. The desire was generated by the context, the mystery, and the experience itself. I suspect that the key was that it was unexpected and illicit. It took me beyond myself, opening some door of desire that couldn't be shut. Had someone asked me in advance whether I would consent to participate, that might have undermined the very sense of liberation I experienced. Trust me, I'm as uncomfortable with the implications of this as you are, but we need to look honestly at the transformative experiences that open the door for us into radical politics and think about how we can construct and open those types of doors for others. If we're not going to be a vanguard and we're not going to convince everyone to join us through mere rational discourse, this might be what we've got to work with. Section 6. Transformation, Invitation, Contagion. How does seduction work? We hypothesize that seduction unfolds via 3 processes: transformation, invitation, and contagion. We transform circumstances, creating space for new possibilities and thus new desires to flourish. We invite others to participate in these new situations, to experiment with different modes of action and desire, and we infect others with curiosity, an insatiable desire for freedom, and the means to experiment towards it. We strive.
I want you guys to think about this. What they're talking about right now. This guy's talking about how do we recruit more radicals to our cause? That's what he's talking about. Yeah, we can see you, Hannah Montana. That's what he's talking about. How can we recruit more radicals to our cause? Now, you might not agree with their methods. You might think it's a little wonky. You might think it's a little strange that they're talking about seducing people. But is it really that strange? They're talking about seducing people into being radicals, seducing people to believe in this utopian future, seducing people to do the unthinkable. They're so boring that no one is probably even hearing them. Do you know how stupid you sound right now? Yeah, I'm going to berate you and I'm going to bully you for a second. Do you know how stupid you sound? They're so boring though, but this is so boring. Do you want this to be reality TV? Is that what you want? Do you want this to be an episode of Bad Girls Club or Cops or whatever bullshit, stupid reality TV show you watch late at night? Is that your expectation? Do you want to know why they're winning and you're losing? Because you go, but it's boring. I wanted reality TV. That's why they're winning, and that's why you're losing. You think no one's hearing them? You understand that do you want to take a guess at what influenced the campus protesters that popped up all over the country that are still continuing on to this day? You're telling me that thousands of campus protests just popped up out of nowhere and they weren't influenced by this stuff? Of course they were. Do you know how I know they were influenced by this stuff? Because they were reciting it at the protests. You might think it's boring because you're expecting an episode of Cheaters. You might think this is boring because you're expecting the latest episode of what is that TLC show about, like, Sister Wives. You might think this is boring because you're confusing this with Real Housewives. But I promise you, the actual activists don't think this is boring. This gets off the actual activists. Do you understand that? And goddamn, if you think this is boring, you can't handle anything. You can't. That's in real life, though. I wanted reality TV. I thought I was watching I thought that, you know what this person thought? I'm going to tell you right now. You know what this person thought? They thought because they've seen people in pink hair on libs of TikTok, like, screaming and doing, eh. This person thought they were getting libs of TikTok. This person literally thought they were getting libs of TikTok. They think Antifa is libs of TikTok. I promise you. I promise you that's what's going on right now. I have libs of TikTok blocked on Twitter. I won't look at it. I won't share it. Libs of TikTok may have started off as something that was kind of funny, haha, like, look at all this crazy stuff on TikTok. Libs of TikTok has become a massive fucking disinformation factory for the conservative right. Because the conservative right believes that libs of TikTok is real life. You guys understand that, right? They believe libs of TikTok is real. Libs of TikTok is videos that are mostly made to go viral on TikTok. Press 1 in the chat if you think that Marxists know the theoretical arguments that we're listening to. Press 2 in the chat if you think, like this conservative obviously does, that Marxists don't know what they're talking about. 1 in the chat if you think that real Marxists and real socialists know what they're talking about. 2 in the chat if you think that they don't know what they're talking about. I'm not going to answer your question. We're going to have the chat answer your question. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. My chat just jumped. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. There's not a single 2 in the entire chat right now. 1, 1, 1. They are living this ideology every day of their lives, and that is why they're winning. Every time a conservative says they don't even know what they want, they don't even know why they're protesting, that's bullshit conservative propaganda. Marxists always know why they're protesting. They very literally always have lists of demands. A demand list is the basic document of any fucking protest. On the college campuses, they had billboards that said, here are our demands. And even with those billboards, literally said, like, here are our demands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They had those on every college campus. And even then, Look at this. No, foot soldiers don't know. They don't know. No one knows. No, bro. No, you're the one who doesn't know because you're not fucking listening. What I am telling you is that on every college campus, they had lists of demands on giant billboards at the encampments. How do they not know when they are literally creating lists of demands? You need to let this cognitive dissonance go away, bro. One of two things is going to happen right now. Either you're going to get this beaten into your head, and you're going to stop arguing, and you're going to accept reality, or you're going to run crying back to libs of TikTok and the Daily Wire who are lying to you. This is conservative propaganda. This is not real. Any conservative influencer who has ever said, they don't even know why they're protesting. They don't even know. Look, guys, they don't know. They don't know why they're protesting, okay? They absolutely do know why they're protesting. Literally, they've been making demands about divestment for years. They have an entire billboard with a list of demands, like positioned at the entry of their encampments, and you don't think they know why they're protesting? Then why are there the list of demands? People might think I'm mean right now because I'm yelling at this person, but what's going on is this person has listened to way too many conservative influencers, and they need a good smack in the face. They need to be slapped across the face. Figuratively, not literally. I'm not actually hitting anyone, but you need to get slapped across the face figuratively, and you need to wake the fuck up. And I don't know any other way to wake people up anymore, because I get this all the time with people coming into my chats and repeating conservative bullshit propaganda talking points that are not hinged into reality. Everything your conservative influencers told you is a lie. Everything the Daily Wire told you is a lie. Everything Fox News told you is a lie. Everything libs of TikTok told you is a lie. Everything you have learned from any right-leaning influencer, you need to unlearn that information if you are going to understand the left. And if you don't want to understand the left, then go run right back to that world, and they will continue to lie to you and take your money. But we don't lie here. We hinge into reality. Did we scare that person away? Yeah, I think we did. I think we scared them away. Yep. I think we scared them away. Hang on. Maybe I did their name wrong. No, they're still here. Never mind. I don't even remember what point I was making now, to be honest with you. What point did I start off with? I don't remember. There are no thinkers or activists on the right. The popular influencers are all uninformed comedians and entertainers just trying to get clicks. Yeah, that's the truth. That's the truth. And they're all lying to people for money. It's infuriating. And now, in order to convince people of the truth, we actually have to, like, bully them. Like, honestly, the only technique that I know to get people to put away their cognitive dissonance and actually listen is to literally bully them. But I'm the mean guy. I'm the mean guy. I'm not the one that lied to people. I'm not the one that shilled a narrative for money. In fact, the reason that all the fucking classical liberals hate me right now is because I refuse to shill their narrative for money. I refuse to play on their team. I refuse to lie to my audience. And for that, I get called the psychopath on the internet to millions of people. But they're the ones lying. But I'm the mean one. I'm the mean one for telling people the truth. Yeah, sure. Okay. Totes. Reminder that the socialist left have no leaders. Oh, don't even get me started on George Soros, Naruto. Don't even get me started. Don't even get me started. All right, let's keep going.
strive for transformation, because if we desire on the basis of what we know, we can only induce new desires that exceed the confines of our current reality by shifting the conditions in which we live. Sometimes it can be as simple as doing things in the street without permits, or using a park or building for an entirely new purpose.
I need another beer.
Disobedience is crucial to transformation. Nothing opens up a sense of possibility like literally breaking the rules. But our behavior is constrained by far more than traffic laws and zoning regulations. Social norms, gender roles, and innumerable other systems shape how we act. And each way we're constrained provides new terrain for transformation. The key lies in challenging what's taken for granted in a way that opens up the possibility to act differently, and to imagine how the world would be different if those rules and borders were no longer fixed. Invitation requires neither persuasion via rational discourse nor imposition by force. Here we maintain the spirit of consent discourse, asserting our respect for the wishes of others in opposition to coercion. We aspire to a world based on voluntary association, in which participation is based on our own free choice, rather than force or manipulation, and thus we aim to prefigure that world through our methods of creative resistance. This can take many forms: leaving the doors open in the occupied building, modeling mutual aid at public really free markets, offering black bandanas and cans of paint as the march leaves the show.
Wait. Did he really? Constantine Kissen is a psychopath who just equated October 7th to 10 9/11s, saying per capita it was worse. Constantine Kissen is such a fucking Jew. No offense to Jews if you don't do this. If you're a Jew and you do not do this, I'm not talking about you. I am talking about Jewish people who do shit like this. To the person that I just bullied live on the internet, please feel free to ask questions if you're new. I agree with that. But you need to unlearn everything you've heard from the right and take your time. It won't make sense at first, but once you learn their language, you will understand. Look, still here. I appreciate it when I bully people and they don't leave. But you do need to unlearn things. And the reason I yelled at you is because I want you to learn. But you need to work through this cognitive dissonance that you're obviously dealing with right now. The reason I know you're dealing with cognitive dissonance is every single person on my channel that has ever watched this stuff with me has gone through the same thing. So you're not a unique snowflake. You're not like on your own. Every single person who has ever been on my channel, who has watched this stuff with me, has gone through the same level of cognitive dissonance. Yeah, I yell better than Nick, don't I? See, someone on Twitter the other day, they were telling me, they were like, Carlin, you're too nice. You need to yell like Nick. And I was like, you've obviously never seen me yell, have you? They're like, no, you're too nice. You're not as fiery as Nick. I was like, oh, honey. Oh, you just wait. You just wait. Because Nick has a Leo sun. That's true. Nick is a Leo. I'm a Leo moon. I'm also an Aries sun, and I have Pluto in my first house. I am like 5 times as fiery as Nick. But you made it. You're still here. And that we respect. You are not one of us until I have yelled at you. I need my own apology form. Like, you guys know how like Nick has, like Nick's fans have like an apology form for him. Like when people get mad at Nick and one of the boxes is Nick yelled at me. I need that form for me. Oh man. Is Constantine Kissen doing a video about this 9/11 thing? Seriously? Seriously? Maybe I'll have to watch that Constantine Kissen video tonight. Anyway, let's wrap this up, guys.
Of course, we can't literally invite others to participate in many actions beforehand, either because they have to be organized clandestinely or because we honestly don't know what will happen, but We can shape our actions to maximize the agency of potential participants. Seduction casts the invitee as the protagonist, the one whose agency counts, in contrast to consent discourse, which merely seeks permission. The whole point is for people to discover new desires, to want to do something they didn't want before. They have to be in the driver's seat for that to be possible.
When I came here a month ago, I was a magatard. I've listened and I'm learning. I'm so proud when I convert my magatards. It takes a strong man to admit that he was once a magatard, Jeff. I appreciate you. We're gonna detox you yet from that toxic ideology. We're saving people, guys. We are saving people. We are saving people from the propaganda that they have been shilled by conservatives. We're saving them from a land of lunacy and conspiracy theories, and we're showing them that reality is so much worse than what they think it is. I'm a fascist, kind of. I'm pretty far right. But I have all sorts of people in my audience. I have libertarians in my audience. I have conservatives in my audience. I have disaffected lefties in my audience. I have independents in my audience. I really do have, there are communists who watch my channel that, because I know their ideology better than they do. So we really do have, the entire gamut of people.
In this sense, we are using seduction to mean the opposite of its traditional negative connotation of trying to get something from people against their will or at their expense. Finally, we aspire to invite others into practices that will prove contagious, ideas that self-replicate, models that can be applied in a variety of circumstances, attitudes that prove infectious. Contagion ensures that rebellion isn't restricted to activists, scenesters, or any other particular group. Only when revolt spreads so widely that it can no longer be quarantined to a specific demographic will anarchy move permanently beyond the anarchists. We succeed when others emerge from the spaces we create feeling more powerful. We win when the ruptures of possibility we open prove impossible to close. Section 7. When seduction fails. Unfortunately, our actions don't always achieve these goals. Sometimes we try to cast spells of transformation and they fail. One way our efforts can go awry is when they position the organizing cabal as the protagonists rather than the invitees we hope to seduce into participation. In these cases, our actions don't spread but remain the province of a distinct group. For partisans of transformation, what counts is the circulation and contagion of subversive ideas and practices, not the power of a specific social body, be it anarchists or the party. Sometimes when our seductions fail, those we've attempted to invite feel used rather than seduced. Over the years, this has proved one of the primary causes of the unpopularity of unilateral militant activity. It's flattering to be offered a role as a protagonist in an exciting story, but it isn't so pleasant to feel that others are trying to take advantage of you. When people speak with frustration in a debriefing conversation about the lack of consent implicit in how an action played out, we must understand that as a failure of seduction. When they speak of consent, they're describing their reaction to the actions that took place. Our analysis of seduction treats the desires underlying these as the center of gravity. Perhaps we can best understand such conflicts by reframing them. They are not merely contests between people with different desires, but contests between different desires playing out between people as well as within individuals. The failure of an unpopular action doesn't stem from the fact that it failed to meet the desires of participants or bystanders. Rather, the action failed to enable subversive desires to arise or flow into new hosts. Critics who frame their objections in consent discourse may not be fundamentally opposed to the tactics in question after all. They may simply not feel that they had a chance to become protagonists in their own stories of rebellion. Section 8. Into the unknown. What are anarchists good for? We don't see ourselves as, quote-unquote, the revolutionary subject, nor its vanguard or representative, but that doesn't mean we're irrelevant to the struggles and upheavals around us. We up the ante and rep the anti. We call bluffs and take dares. We discover lines of flight out of consensus reality. We take risks to induce others to share them with us. We take care of each other so we can be dangerous together. Ultimately, the politics of seduction don't rely on rational argumentation to influence people. We dive headlong into the terrifying fires of transformation, allowing strange passions to seize us. It's not that these desires are quote-unquote ours, rather, we are theirs. We become lightning rods that crackle with flows of charged desire. Let's not forget the importance of seducing ourselves with our actions. It's frighteningly easy for activism to ossify into dreary, repetitive routines. Actions that don't emerge out of our own desires are unlikely to seduce us or anyone else. Sure, some kids will be radicalized by the food not bombs run by 4 burnt-out punks who resent every Sunday they spend in the kitchen. But we forge our deepest relationships of struggle in collectively experiencing the new, the exciting, the terrifying. It's not only beautiful, but strategic to live lives that push to the outermost edges of what's possible. The stakes are high. From consent discourse, we retain the prioritization of caring for others and paying attention to their needs. We must never disregard the well-being of those we invite into zones of transformation. Yet neither can we play it safe and allow consensus reality to dictate our range of possible dreams and actions. We cannot promise safety, but we can share in the danger of the unknown, in its pleasures and its risks. This has been...
All right, I guess that's the end. I do have the Constantine Kissen video. Listen, here's the thing. This was interesting to me. This wasn't the most spicy thing we've ever watched, in that we didn't get a ton of like really crazy clips from it or stuff like that. It's just more like reinforcing everything that we've heard before. But what I will tell you is this. We will sit through hours and hours and hours of this stuff. And then when you find that one clip where you literally find them talking about the radical revolutionary overthrow of the United States government, when you find them saying that they want to abolish the family because this is all about capitalism and this is why they're getting rid of the family and this is specifically how they're doing it, when you find them saying that they want to abolish the prison industrial complex and they want to repurpose all prisons to house people who are the enemies of socialism, when you find them saying we want to get rid of the private family kitchen because the family kitchen upholds the nuclear family, which upholds capitalism, all of a sudden, when you find them saying we want to birth all babies outside the womb because that's going to give us gender equality if we have all babies birthed via birthing pods outside of the womb. And I have found all of these things and so much more. When you find those clips, those brief moments, it makes the hours and hours and hours of sitting through the boring parts, it makes it all worth it. Because when you find those clips of like, holy shit, they actually do want to do this, and you can make those clips and you can put them out there for the masses to be able to understand this stuff, like, it's totally worth it. I'm sorry. Like, I don't know, do people agree with me in the chat on that? It's just like, yeah, I know we sit through like a lot of boring stuff and sometimes there's not even that much to say about it, but when you land on those moments, it's like it's like we're digging for treasure, bro. We're digging for treasure. And most of the time, we're just shoveling dirt. And shoveling dirt can be boring. But you hit that fucking treasure, and you're like, oh shit! We hit the treasure! And then it becomes a hunt. It becomes a hunt. How much more treasure can we find? How much bigger is the treasure? How much crazier is the treasure? Like, it's like gambling. It is. It's like gambling. That's a really good, like you might sit at that slot machine, you just like bing, 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 and then you hit the jackpot. You're like, okay. And then you cash out immediately if you hit the jackpot. You don't just gamble that shit away. I once hit a $1,400 jackpot in Reno, and you know what I did? I cashed out, and they came over and they gave me $1,400 bills, and I was like, thank you. And then I didn't play any more slots after that. How big is it? Bigger than you understand it. Bigger than you think it is. They control every public school in this country. They have people in every government agency. They control the media. It's not just the Jews. And there is overlap. There is overlap. But most of the socialists are not Jewish. Okay? So, like, there's a difference between where did the ideology come from? Because undoubtedly, we know where the ideology is fucking Jewish, okay? The ideology is fucking Jewish, okay? Fine. But most of the radical revolutionary socialist activists, the real ones in the real world, they're not Jewish. In fact, most of them hate Jews. Most of them hate Jews. Most of them are, like, legitimately anti-Semitic. It's bigger than you think it is. It's bigger than anyone thinks it is. Because it's a highly decentralized model. They're all over the country. They're in every single state. And no one's listening to them. So they can basically get away with whatever they want. Anyway. Guys, do you want to watch that Constantine Kissen video real quick? Now, Brucey, you did send me something. Hang on, where is it? Brucey, you did send me a video, but your video looks like it's edited and a little crazy. And I want to watch the full video, okay? So I do have the full video. Let's watch that Constantine Kissen video. Remember, guys, Constantine Kissen thinks that I am a grade A psycho. This will just be our little treat, our cherry on top. Doesn't Constantine Kissen look like a robot here? I mean, come on. Like, doesn't he look dead inside? Doesn't Constantine Kissen look like he has sold his soul to the highest bidder? Does he look like he looks like he's sold his soul? All right, let's see what he had to say.
I'm off the fence about Israel's war. Here's why.
He was never on the fence, by the way.
Exactly a year ago, when thousands of Hamas militants crossed Israel's border to engage in an orgy of medieval violence, I knew little about Israel and had no opinion about the long-running conflict there.
He's literally Jewish.
I've never been to Israel. I've never been to Gaza. I've never been to the West Bank. It's not a conflict I studied at university or read about extensively. People on both sides who care passionately about this issue find it hard to believe, but in truth, most people are like this. That's why, for many months after the October 7th attacks, I avoided commenting on the war or even discussing it on our show. Instead, I read, watched, and listened to the endless commentary, debates, and discussions to understand what people on various sides were saying. Having gathered those perspectives, I then did my best to apply first principles thinking to the...
Didn't he... What the fuck is first principles thinking? Because someone told me I was an expert in first principles thinking the other day, and I don't know what that means. But what I'll say is this. Wasn't it like about a month ago that Constantine Kissen called everyone that didn't support Israel the woke right? And now he's releasing a video on October 7th saying, I'm off the fence. Well, bro, you were already off the fence. You're already calling everyone the woke right that doesn't agree with you, bro. Come on.
Arguments I heard. Thinking from first principles means stripping whatever you're trying to analyze down to its core and working back from there.
Oh, please.
Context is extremely important to understanding. When it comes to highly emotive situations like this one, people often flood you with emotional context, which does not support the argument they're actually making. There are some obvious examples in this debate, which we will address shortly. First principles thinking helps you see the structure of arguments.
He looks
the logic
awful.
of an argument.
Legitimately, he looks awful. Is Constantine Kissen, does he look like Skeletor? Listen, do you know how I know that Constantine Kissen is full of shit when he calls me a grade A psycho? I look so much better than him. How we look matters, guys. Like, listen, there have been times in my life when I haven't looked great. I'll admit that. Like full stop. I'll own that. But he looks awful.
First principles thinking helps you see the structure of arguments. The logic of an argument is like the skeleton of a body. You cannot see it from the outside, but it is usually the cause of why the body moves the way that it does. Getting to the skeleton of an argument is essential to understanding it. This was my approach when we had prominent pro-Palestine guests like Bassem Youssef and Norman Finkelstein on trigonometry, as well as pro-Israel guests like Ben Shapiro and Natasha Hausdorff. It was also my approach when I hosted a fiery debate on the subject at Dissident Dialogues, and when Safety Namus invited me to discuss this issue on this podcast. So what does first principle thinking tell us about the conflict? First, the easiest way to understand a complicated problem is to find a comparable situation about which you already know what to think. For example, if we accept that October 7th was a terrorist attack, as I believe most people do, the obvious approach would be to compare it to other terrorist attacks in recent history. That, as it happens, is impossible, because on a proportionate basis, the Western world has never experienced an attack on this scale. If we take 9/11, the most...
Israel isn't the West! Israel is not in the West! The Western world has never seen a terrorist attack on this scale. Israel is not the West! Israel is not in Europe. Bro! Okay, now we're getting to the 9/11 comparison.
Impactful terrorist attack in living memory, which shook the world's dominant superpower to its very core, we see that 2,977 people were killed in a country of 285 million people. On October 7th, approximately 1,200 people were killed in a country of just 9 million people. Some keep calling October 7th Israel's 9/11.
No.
That isn't remotely true. If October 7th was Israel 9/11, on a per capita basis, only 100 people would have been killed. In other words, October 7th was at least 12 times as bad as 9/11. And that's before accounting for the fact that Hamas took hundreds of hostages.
Hey, Constantine. Did you account for the fact that Israel killed its own people on October 7th? Did you account for the fact that Israel instituted the Hannibal Directive on October 7th, which basically says that they will kill not only people in the military, but their own civilians rather than have them being taken hostage? And there are multiple documented cases of Israel murdering its own civilians on October 7th. Did you take that into account? That's documented on antiwar.com, by the way, if you don't believe me. I'm not making that up. No. Probably didn't take that into account, did he? Planet fatness. Eventually these people grow... No. Wrong. This person is actually saying, socialists grow out of it, guys. They're just gonna grow... No, bro. No. Thank you for the money, but you are completely and totally wrong. No. Press 1 in... Hang on. You're not just going to hear this from me. Press 1 in the chat if you agree with Planet Fatness that eventually radical revolutionary socialists grow out of it. Press 2 in the chat if you think that Planet Fatness has been basically like propagandized to by conservative shills who don't know what the fuck they're talking about. 1 in the chat if you agree with him. 2 in the chat if you think that he has bought into too much conservative bullshit. 2. Hang on, 2. Oh, why isn't it showing? 2. 2. Literally the only people who agree with you are the ones that are been propagandized to by conservatives, bro. There's no evidence to support your position. Bro, are you fucking serious? Hey, Schultz, do me a favor. What year did socialists first start taking over the schools, the public schools? Do you know? Do you have any idea? What year Did the radical revolution... See, this is why conservative influencers can suck every fucking dick. Because they deliver me people like this who don't know what the fuck they're talking about. What year did radical revolutionary socialists start taking over the public schools? Yeah, Constantine Kissen is literally calling me a psycho. It's true. What year did radical revolutionary socialists start taking over the public schools? You think this revolution can sustain itself? What year? This is only for Schultz. What year did the radical revolutionary socialists start taking over the public schools? We're waiting for your answer, bro. What you think? No. You are playing my game now, fucker. You are playing my game. You will answer my question or you will be permanently banned from my chat. Do you understand? We are not playing your game. We're playing my game. What year? The 60s. Thank you. So, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000, 2010. We're now in 70 fucking years. We are in 70 years of the radical revolutionary left controlling the public schools. And it has gotten progressively worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And you really think they can't sustain themselves on what fucking planet? And then you go back, no, it wasn't in 1949. That's wrong. It was in 1937. It was 10 years before this. 1937. I know because I was looking it up the other day. 1937 is when they set up shop at Columbia University. You're honestly telling me they can't sustain themselves? When is it going to fall apart, bro? Because they've just been recruiting more and 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 more ever since the fucking 30s. Yeah, I think that you're not smart enough to be here. I think you might not be smart enough to be on my channel, bro. Honestly. So when is it going to slow down, conservatives? When is it going to slow down, retards? You guys are the ones saying, they're going to grow out of it. If you're not a liberal in your 20s, you have no heart. If you're not a conservative by your 30s, you have no brain. When are they growing out of it, conservatives? What year can we expect them to grow out of it? Because they have controlled the public schools for 70 years, and they are stronger than ever. No, this is your question. What year can we expect them to grow out of it? When can we expect them to grow out of it? You're the one who's making the argument. Fucking defend it. We're waiting. We're waiting for you, bro. We were talking about Constantine Kissen, and then the conservative fucking retards had to hijack the whole thing. What year can we expect them to grow out of it since it's been going for 70 years, or do you just want to admit that you are wrong? We're waiting. We are waiting on you. We're waiting. We are waiting. What year can we expect them to grow out of it when they've been controlling the public schools for 70 years? We are waiting. Yup. Next up, we're going to get... Next up, Bro. Are you retarded? Are you retarded? You think that a movement that started in the 30s, that started in the 1930s, that had control of the public schools by the 60s, that has maintained that control for 70 years. You think they're just going to wake up in 10 to 20 years and grow out of it? You are a fucking retard. You are not smart enough to be here right now, bro. You are just not fucking smart enough to be here. I don't want to see you talking in my chat anymore. You're going to be in timeout for the rest of the chat. If you want to come back and learn, then fine, but we're not allowing you to talk anymore. Because your job is to listen and your job is to learn. And if you ever come on my channel saying, they're going to grow out of it in 10 years, guys, in 10 years, I know they've controlled the public school for 70 years, but they're just going to grow out of it. Are you fucking retarded? My God, these people are stupid. This is why they listen to conservative retards like Constantine Kissen. This is why they listen to conservative retards like James Lindsay. This is why they are lied to all of the time. Yeah, I'll bet you he watches Tim Pool. I'll bet you he watches Tim. The public schools are failing and they're gonna fail, okay, guys? Well, you know, guess what, asshole? I live in New Hampshire where homeschooling is down. Jesus Christ. We are going to lose because of morons like this. Anyway, let's go back. Let's get back into Constantine. Yeah. They're all aborting their kids. They don't have kids. It's also wrong and false and stupid. Like, my God. We know every conservative bullshit propaganda excuse. We've heard them over and over and over. Like, we can tell exactly what the conservative influencers are pushing on any given day because everyone comes in my chat. They're all aborting their babies. None of them have kids. They're all mentally ill. We have jobs. They don't have jobs. We're winning. They're losing. We're winning. All right, let's go back to Constantine. Let's go back to Constantine's land of retardia.
People would have been killed. In other words, October 7th was at least 12 times as bad as 9/11. And that's before accounting for the fact that Hamas took hundreds of hostages, many of whom have been killed since. So the obvious question is, if thousands of armed Mexicans had penetrated the southern border of the United States, killed 36,000 Americans, and dragged off thousands of hostages, how would America have reacted? Would there still be a Mexico to speak of? Whatever your view of the history of this conflict, I believe the logic of this is impenetrable. However, there are some persuasive arguments from the anti-Israel camp which are aimed at contextualizing October 7th. Let's look at them. Number one, history did not start on October 7th.
True.
The crux of this argument, when broken down to its central premise, is that the state of Israel is illegitimate.
Yep.
In this conception, Israel was created because land belonging to Palestinians was taken by Western powers and given to European Jews fleeing the Holocaust. Palestinians were not consulted, did not give consent, and found themselves kicked out of their homes. Israel is a settler colonial state.
True.
2. October 7th was a response to Israeli brutality and oppression.
True.
Those of you who watched my debate with Safety Namas will recall that he made this argument repeatedly. The people of Gaza and the West Bank are treated so badly, he argued, the response we saw on October 7th was totally understandable. An act of resistance aimed at redressing the wrongs they have suffered.
Yep.
3. Israel is killing civilians.
True.
The scenes of parents pulling their children out of rubble speak for themselves. 4. Israel is engaged in indiscriminate attacks, which is why so many innocent people are dying.
True.
This argument aims to prove that Israel is the bad guy in this war because it is killing lots of people, either deliberately or due to a callous disregard for the lives of Palestinians.
True.
These are, to the best of my knowledge, the 4 principal arguments made by the anti-Israel side.
And they're all true.
If there are others, please let me know in the comments and I will address them in a follow-up video. Let's go through the arguments one by one. And for the sake of argument, let us accept that every point in each argument is valid and historically accurate. I know many viewers will find this objectionable, but I believe...
Wait. Constantine Kissen is literally saying, let's go through each argument in so this video is 12 minutes long. We're 5 minutes into it. That means there's 7 minutes left in this video, which means Constantine Kissen is going to spend roughly 2 minutes on each of these arguments, right? And he's starting with the premise, guys, just assume I'm telling you the truth, guys. Just assume, for the sake of argument, you know, we don't have that much time. Just assume that I'm telling you the truth. No, Constantine, I will not assume that you're telling us the truth. No.
I believe the best way to unpack this entire discussion is to take people's arguments as valid and see if they make sense. The first argument, whose central premise is that Israel is illegitimate, seems to be at the core of every debate. It feels reasonable and logical to many people to contextualize Israel's response to October 7th in this way. After all, if Israel was created through illegitimate means, it puts the discussion on an entirely different footing, doesn't it?
Hey, Constantine, why do we literally have Israelis on video raping Palestinians? Like, that's just one of the war crimes, bro, but it's pretty fucking heinous. Why are Israelis literally protesting for their right to rape Palestinians?
Well, actually, no, it doesn't. Again, let's think from first principles. If we believe every pro-Palestinian claim and accept that Israel was created through the forced placement of European Jews in a foreign land by Western powers, we must look for a comparable situation in which a country was created through some form of displacement of the native population. Most of you live in such a country. The United States, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada are all the products of invasion, colonization, and brutal conquest. If you go back far enough, so is almost every other country in the world.
Is he saying the United States is literally the same as Israel? Is that what he's saying? We have to support Israel because the United States was created exactly like Israel? Yeah, go fuck yourself, Constantine.
Like it or not, Israel exists. It's home to over 9 million people. The idea that they would, could, or should accept the destruction of what is now their country is absurd. The United States government would not tolerate missile strikes and terrorist rampages from Native American reservations. Neither would any government of any country under any circumstances. Peace in the Middle East will not be achieved by attempting to undo many decades of history. The second argument centers on the idea that October 7th was a response to Israeli occupation and brutality.
True.
This, again, seems reasonable to many people. After all, what would it take for you to behave the way Hamas did on October 7th? The problem with this argument is that what happened on October 7th was not an attempt to weaken Israel militarily.
Really?
It was not an attempt to break Hamas militants out of Israeli jails. It was not an attack on the Israeli Defense Force.
What are you talking about? It literally was. The reason they took hostages was to get Hamas militants out of Israeli jails, Constantine. You're literally fucking lying.
Not a prison breakout, as some people like to describe it. Because when people break out of a prison, they don't normally head to the nearest town and start massacring women and children. October 7th was, by design and implementation, a terrorist attack whose purpose was to slaughter civilians, terrify Israeli society, and nothing else. This was not an act of resistance. It was an act of terrorism, which is why Israel had to react to it in the manner that it has, and why any other country would have done the same. The third argument is that Israel is killing civilians.
Yes.
This is the one claim made by the anti-Israel side that is undeniably true. However, this is an example of the emotive but irrelevant context I mentioned earlier. Civilians are always killed in war. The question is not...
You know what? Israel only killed 40,000 civilians, most of which were women and children, but that always happens in war, guys. We should just let that go. Can we just overlook that? Can we just overlook the fact that Israel has killed 40,000 fucking civilians? You know, after all, guys, that always happens. And, you know, I am the good classical liberal that believes in humanity. And I just think we need to dismiss that, you know, they're Palestinians after all. They don't really even count as human, according to Constantine. I would never say that. Wow, this guy's a fucking retard.
Not whether they're being killed, but who bears responsibility for their deaths and who can stop the killing.
Israel.
Again, applying first principles thinking, we must reach for a comparison.
He is literally saying that the Palestinians are responsible to for their own death. He is literally saying that Israel is not responsible for killing the Palestinians, that the Palestinians are responsible for their own death. He's like, if Hamas just released the hostages, then all the killing would stop. So they're really responsible for their own deaths, guys.
War. The question is not whether they're being killed, but who bears responsibility for their deaths and who can stop the killing. Again, applying first principles thinking, we must reach for a comparable example. There is no exact equivalent that comes to mind, but there is some useful context we can consider. Hamas has repeatedly stated that given the opportunity, they will repeat the October 7th attacks again and again and again. While this may seem shocking to us in the West, it makes perfect sense given that Hamas believes Israel is illegitimate and would like to see it gone. This means that unless Israel destroys or degrades their ability to carry out their threats, it is likely to experience more terrorist attacks again and again. Does anyone seriously believe that any government of any country anywhere in the world would or could react to something like 12 9/11s in one day and the threat of more to follow as many times as possible with anything other than all-out war? And who can end the killing? Well, theoretically Israel could, of course, but for the reason we just discussed, they can't, won't, and shouldn't. That leaves Hamas, who could have returned the hostages and surrendered the people who took them. What is more...
Guys, Israel can't be held... Let's get back on a screen. There we go. Guys, Israel just can't be held responsible for killing 40,000 people, half of which are women and children. Israel can't be held responsible for that, guys. Sure, Israel could stop killing hostages, but really, Israel could stop killing people indiscriminately, but really, it's Hamas's fault, guys. It's Hamas. Pinky swear, trust me, bro. Pay no attention to the fact that I'm literally Jewish.
Leaves Hamas, who could have returned the hostages and surrendered the people who took them. What is more, they could hide their civilians in the vast network of tunnels they've built to reduce casualties.
Oh my God.
Instead, they refuse to build bomb shelters and do everything they can to maximize civilian casualties. That's not my opinion, it's something Hamas are themselves proud of. A senior spokesman for the group, Sami Abu Zuhri, gave an interview on Palestinian station Al-Aqsa TV the last time this conflict flared up. The policy of people confronting Israeli warplanes with their bare chests in order to protect their homes has proven effective against the occupation, he said. We in Hamas call upon our people to adopt this policy in order to protect Palestinian homes. So yes, the deaths of civilians are tragic, and in a modern world where you can fill your social media feed with gruesome footage, that tragedy can be broadcast straight into your home 24/7. But the responsibility for their deaths is entirely with Hamas, and the failure to put a stop to the killing is theirs and theirs alone.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the final...
Constantine Kissen is basically a Nazi. Can we all agree on this? 1 in the chat if Constantine Kissen is basically a Nazi. 2 in the chat if you think that everything he's saying is just fine. But remember, guys, Constantine Kissen thinks I'm the grade A psycho. Really? Really? I'm not the one saying, you know, they're totally justified in killing 40,000 people because, you know, Israel could stop, guys. But, you know, do you really want them to stop? Really, it's Hamas's fault that they're killing all of these women and children. Yeah, one, Constantine Kissen, literally a Nazi. Literally a Nazi. Literally a Nazi.
Argument. Israel's attacks are indiscriminate and designed to inflict civilian casualties.
True.
This is actually the simplest argument of the 4 to address because it is an empirical matter.
Bro,
the war in Gaza is
video.
not the first conflict in human history.
There's actual video.
We can compare the ratio of combatant to civilian deaths in this war to others. What happens when we do? Historically, urban warfare operations result in a casualty ratio of 9 civilians for every 1 enemy fighter killed. In Gaza, it is 2 to 1. In other words, despite the deliberate attempts by Hamas to increase the number of civilian casualties, Israel has been extraordinarily successful in reducing them. This doesn't mean that there won't be incidents in which innocent Palestinians are killed, and, as in any war, there will likely be war.
Israel is really trying not to kill people, guys. Really, like, do you understand that Israel is doing their very best to not kill people? Have you ever thought about that?
Crimes committed by both sides. But overall, the numbers don't lie. If you need further evidence that claims of Israel's indiscriminate attacks are nonsense, just look at the way various commentators reacted to what has been dubbed Operation Grim Beeper. Thousands of Hezbollah pages were rigged with explosives and then detonated simultaneously, killing and injuring thousands of terrorists and a small number of bystanders. The pages in question were not picked at random. Israel specifically selected a batch of senior Hezbollah operatives. And still, people like Hamza Yusuf, Scotland's former First Minister, complain about Israel's indiscriminate attacks. This was definitionally the most precise target.
Hey, Constantine, how about the time that Israel bombed people that were getting food from a humanitarian airlift, where the humanitarian food came in and they were like, it was in boxes all around. And there's actual video of this. I'm not making this up. The Palestinians were coming to get the food and Israel just started fucking bombing them. How about the videos of Israel just indiscriminately shooting people, indiscriminately like bombing fucking... How about Israel indiscriminately bombing fucking churches? How about Israel bombing fucking schools? But they're all human shields, guys. You have to understand that every time Israel bombs a church or a school in Palestine, it's because they're human shields, and really, they're basically Hamas, even if they're human shields. Wow. I hope they paid you a lot of money to sell your soul, Constantine. I hope you got a fat check from that, bro. I hope it's fun looking yourself in the mirror every single day, knowing that you sold out.
Targeted and surgical large-scale anti-terrorist operation in human history. In summary, I've engaged with an open mind and in good faith with all the anti-Israel arguments presented to me over the last year. On balance, I regard them as disingenuous, irrelevant, and designed to pull at my heartstrings in order to obscure the harsh reality of this conflict. We would respond exactly the way that Israel has. The only difference is we would do so with the support of every member of the international community, while Israel has to fight not only the terrorists who want to wipe them off the map, but Western apologists for those terrorists as well. If you enjoy these videos, you should know that they're available on my Substack weeks, sometimes months ahead of time. Head on over there now using the link in the description and subscribe.
Constantine Kissen is a literal Nazi. True. All right, guys. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to join me, I am doing a Bitchcraft call tomorrow at 3 p.m. Bitchcraft is an open call where we bitch and we craft. You can do any craft you want. You can come and knit. You can even crochet. You can quilt. You can, do your dishes. You can, draw. You can paint. You can clean your gun. You can just hang out. You can play video games, whatever. I'm doing a Bitchcraft call tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. How you get access to that is by heading over to my Substack, which is Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. Head over to the Unwoke Roundup email and scroll all the way down to the bottom. And underneath this red box, you will find the link to join the Bitchcraft call tomorrow at 3 p.m. Of course, we will also be doing Socialism Saturday tomorrow at 6 p.m., where we will continue to be the only people on the internet who watch and listen to the real radical revolutionary far left, and Constantine Kissen can suck every dick. So far as I'm concerned. Go outside and see. I didn't see the magic sky last night. I was so disappointed. I went outside. I was like, I want to see some Aurora Borealis, and I didn't see anything. And I was like, oh man, everyone else got Aurora Borealis but me. I was so disappointed. Maybe some other people saw. Maybe I just went out at the wrong time. I don't know, but I didn't see any Aurora Borealis. Maybe we'll try again tonight. Who knows? You didn't see anything? You didn't see anything either? Okay, I'm not alone. I'm not the only person who didn't see any Aurora Borealis. Maybe tonight. Maybe tonight will be the night. All right, guys. Thank you for hanging out with me for 3 hours on this stream. I do appreciate it. I hope you learned a thing or two. I will be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. Saturdays we do 6 p.m. because I have a life too, and sometimes I want to do other things on Saturday. So I'll see you at 6 p.m. for Socialism Saturday. Take care, guys. Have a good one. We'll see you soon. Should we play out with a song? Let's play out with a song. Let's see. Here you go.
capitalism, but James won't admit it. He refuses to believe queer theory destabilizes normativity, gender binary, and the nuclear family. James blocks the truth, smears people who try to show him, creates an echo chamber for himself to reinforce his fantasy. He used to believe in something, what happened? Mills for liberty. Gnostic sex cult, building his own world. A Gnostic sex cult, unhinged from reality. He's totally lost it. What can we do but mock him relentlessly? It's not a Gnostic sex cult, James. No, it's not. Stop lying to your audience. No, it's not. It's not Gnostic, James. Mary Nardini tells us queer liberation means the annihilation of capitalism. Catch up, James. Whiteness means capitalism. Queer theory hates capitalism. Whiteness means capitalism. Queer theory hates capitalism. Whiteness means capitalism. It's all about capitalism. Everyone knows it's capitalism. The socialists know it's capitalism. Wake up, James. It's capitalism. Whoa. The socialists know it's capitalism. Wake up, James. It's capitalism. It's all about capitalism. Everyone knows it's capitalism. The socialists know it's capitalism. Wake up, James. It's capitalism. It's capitalism. To pocket all that money from the mills for liberty. The left hates capitalism, but James won't admit it. He refuses to believe queer theory stabilizes normativity, gender binary, and the nuclear family. But James blocks the truth, smears people who try to show him, creates an echo chamber for himself to reinforce his fantasy. Is to believe in something. What happens for liberty? Gnostic sex cult, building his own world. Gnostic sex cult, unhinged from reality. He's totally lost it. What can we do but mock him relentlessly?